Could I have your attention? Let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the City of Canton work session, September the 6th, 2016. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. We are fortunate tonight to have the associate pastor at the First United Methodist Church, Miss Kelly Beckley. Welcome, and we appreciate you coming to give the invocation here tonight.
It's my honor. Let's pray. God of justice and mercy, thank you for the gift of life and for the opportunity and responsibility to serve the people of this great city. Ask that you would embolden each man and woman who represent this community to act with character and conviction. Help them to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help them to speak with charity and restraint, and remind them of the passion and the calling that they have received. As stewards of your authority, give them guidance as they lead your people. Help them to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with them, those who are weak or poor or different in any way. Help us all to remember your creation and the reverence that it deserves. And finally, with the power vested in me, I ask your blessing upon their work as they seek to build a community that is pleasing in your sight. With gratitude for all who serve your people, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Certainly good to see everyone here tonight. Welcome. We have first item of business. We have a couple of proclamations, and then we will have our police chief do some employee recognitions. The first, I will read the first proclamation, which is support our Seniors Day. The late President Ronald Reagan proclaimed August 21, 1988 as National Senior Citizens Day in honor and recognition of our older generation who have achieved so much for our families, our communities, and our country. And whereas in proclamation, President Reagan stated that with improved health care and more years of productivity, older citizens are reinforcing their historical roles as leaders and as links with our patrimony and sense of purpose as individuals and as a nation. Many older people are embarking on second careers, giving younger Americans a fine example of responsibility, resourcefulness, competence, and determination. And more than 4.5 million senior citizens are serving as volunteers in various programs and projects that benefit every sector of society. Wherever the need exists, older people are making their presence felt for their own good and that of others. For all they have achieved throughout life and for all they continue to accomplish, we owe older citizens our thanks and heartfelt salute. We can best demonstrate our gratitude and esteem by making sure that our communities are good places in which to mature and grow, places in which older people can participate to the fullest and can find the encouragement, acceptance, assistance, and services they need to continue to lead lives of independence and integrity. And whereas our community is blessed to have a nonprofit organization committed to raising funds to benefit Cherokee County senior services programs such as Meals on Wheels, Last Stop, Emergency Fund, Food Closet, and Fan Drive, as well as many other helpful assistance programs for the elderly in Cherokee County. This is a nonprofit organization which is known as the Cherokee County Volunteer Aging Council, VAC. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Mayor and Council of the City of Canton, Georgia, September the 6th, 2018, as Support Our Seniors Day, and encourage all citizens, elected officials, and city staff to support the fundraising efforts of the Volunteer Aging Council so that the programs in place to aid and assist our elderly can continue. We further encourage everyone to use this day to spend more time with senior citizens, show your appreciation for senior citizens, do volunteer work in support of the elderly. If you are a senior citizen, enjoy your day any way you desire. After all, this is your day. Make sure to take advantage of senior citizen specials and discounts, and in witness whereof, I am here too, with my hand set forth, and cause the seal of the City of Canton to be affixed this 6th day of September 2018. We have someone here, I believe. Benny Carter will receive this plaque.
Mayor and Council, I wanted to thank you for your time and your recognition of seniors in Cherokee County. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Cherokee County Volunteer Aging Council, and as Mayor said, we're a nonprofit 501c3 organization that supports all seniors in Cherokee County. But of course, we work mostly with those that have the most critical and urgent needs. So we thank you for your recognition of them, and we ask everyone to remember that we meet these needs of seniors through awareness, through education, through volunteerism, and fundraising. You have at your seat, I believe, our fundraiser coming up on Monday the 17th. It's a golf tournament up at the Fairways of Canton, and we encourage everybody to participate in that. We're still looking for golf players. We're looking for sponsors, and of course, we're looking for volunteers. So again, thank you for your time, thank you for your service, and thank you for the recognition of the needs of the seniors in Cherokee County. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say one more item, and that's for affordable senior housing, probably the greatest need. So if you have an opportunity to encourage or to help that situation in Cherokee County, I'd ask you to do that, as that's one of our greatest needs. Thank you again.
Thank you, Benny. Appreciate that very much. We have another proclamation here. It's Constitution Week 2018. Whereas September the 17th, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, providing a historic opportunity for all Americans to remember the achievements of our founding fathers and to reflect on the actions of Americans who for the past 231 years have defined the words of the Constitution by exercising their rights and responsibilities as citizens. And whereas the Constitution is fundamentally predicated on governance by we the people, making citizens' understanding of the Constitution and its framework an essential element of the future of our country and the civic health of its populace. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September the 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Gene Hobgood, Mayor of the City of Canton, on behalf of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Hightower Trail Chapter, do hereby proclaim September the 17th through September the 23rd, 2018 to be Constitution Week in the City of Canton, and ask that our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787. Proclaim this 6th day of September 2018. Okay, I believe Mary Bennett. Okay, I guess she didn't make it to receive this, so we'll make sure that she gets that. Okay. The next item on the agenda is employee recognitions. Chief Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If I can have Officer Michael Crow step forward. as we have in the past many times, we think it's extremely important for members of our community to meet our newest officer, to see our newest officer's face. This is Officer Michael Crow. He just joined the Canton Police Department, has prior service with the Bartow County Sheriff's Office, and is a member of our FTO program. He exhibited that he is going to be an excellent fit, not only for our department, but also for the community. He has that attitude and the mindset and the heart to serve the great city that we live in. So, welcome, Michael Crow. Mayor and Council, as I have in the past, each month, you have a copy before you, and I'll quickly go through it. I know it's a packed agenda. This is our basically what we call our CPD crime report for August 2018. Just real quickly going through it. Number of calls for service our officers answered is 1,900. There are 104 arrests. As far as traffic contacts, citations, and warnings, 597. A couple of our highest areas of concern as far as criminal activity, shoplifting is one of our highest areas between several of the business the stores in our area, and we have conducted some community operations and other operations and working with those businesses to lessen that activity each month, and that seems to be going well. Entering autos, we had 35 cases. A majority of those were some incidents in August up in the northern part of town in the Summer Walk area of town, and our detectives are actively working those cases, put information out to our media and on our social media, trying to garner some leads, and we're actively working those cases at this time. And we've conducted what we call a roving roll call in the area as well, where our officers went out and conducted a briefing and actually talked to a few citizens and about their concerns and some other things, and some helpful hints on how to make yourself a hardened target against criminal activity as well. Other area, our accidents, we are down as far as our accidents go from last month by a pretty significant amount, by 11. A lot of our selective traffic operations, trying to educate the community in reference to the hands-free. And we like to think that the hands-free has had something to do with the decrease we've had over the past couple of months, but I'm sure there has to be a lot more data to be analyzed to see if that's the case. But over the last 2 months, that activity, accidents have decreased. Upcoming community events, we have our what we do every month, our Coffee with a Cop. Is Thursday the 13th at the Oak House. That just opened this past week. And we have some case updates, additional entered autos of one of our dealerships that we're working on. Our detectives actively working some leads in that case at this time. So any questions or anything as far as the monthly report?
Any questions, comments?
And I have one last thing.
Absolutely.
I will get out of the way. As you know, last 2 months ago, we released a recruitment video. We had a second in the series of videos, professional videos that we've never had at our department, and it was time to do that. So tonight, we I guess what we call a promotional video, trying to promote what the City of Canton Police Department and also the City of Canton, and we definitely had some excellent support and interviews with the community leaders. I think you'll probably recognize a couple of those in that video, and we'll play that at this time. Guess we're having volume. I'm sorry you couldn't hear it, but we'll be releasing that probably tonight or tomorrow on our social media platform. So thank you for your time.
Good job, Chief. Thank you. We have another special guest before we get into the meat of the agenda. Chief Tim Prather with the Cherokee County Fire Department. And he has some really good news for us, I think. Where are you? You're right there. Okay, good. Some really good news for really all the Cherokee County residents, and very good news, even better news for the city of Canton residents and property owners. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is one of those nights that it's a good night to be here to come before you, and I thank you for that opportunity to be here and give me some time to provide you the results of the ISO review that we went through back in April. So I thank you for that opportunity to be here this evening. Also, I send my apologies for not being here back in June to deliver the annual report. I had some scheduling conflicts with the boss and my wife. It was our anniversary weekend, so I had to that come first. But I understand Chief Robson did a good job with it, so I couldn't be here. I come here tonight to cover the results of the ISO review that we got back just last week. I presented it to the Board of Commission Tuesday night, so I'm here tonight to present you the information and a little bit more, actually. The arrow, right? Uh-oh. For those that are not aware, that the ISO is the Insurance Services Organization, and that's the group that basically evaluates all fire departments across the United States. And at one time, that's what the insurance companies relied on. Now, there's a lot of factors now that are used to determine insurance rates. But just in a nutshell, they have a classification that goes from 1 to 10. A class 10 basically means that they've either met minimum requirements of ISO or they really don't have any fire protection. And then class 1 is the best public protection rating that you can get. So 1 to 10. I think the largest class in the United States is a class 5, and it's about at the 20% mark, I believe. But when you see ISO ratings, that is it. Class 1 to class 10, 10 being the worst, class 1 being the best. So just want to give you a brief history on that. Talk to me. When we get rated in 3 main categories. They come in and they look at our 911 center, and you can earn up to 10 points credit for that area. Then they look at the fire department. 50% of the total score comes from your fire department. And then they look at the water supply. They look at all the water systems that we utilize throughout the county. And I believe there's 4 or 5 somewhere in there, from Lake Arrowhead all the way down to the south end. And these are the areas that we're graded on. And back around, what does it go backwards? I'm just hitting the arrow. Back in 2013 or 14, they come up with another category to give us an extra 5.5 points if you could get it. That's the max you could get. And the community risk reduction is the fire marshal's fire inspection, fire prevention, fire safety education. I don't know why it took that long to come up with that, because we've had it in the fire service forever, but there's a lot invested in that. So they finally decided to add that to the rating schedule somewhere around 2014. I know our last review, they give us credit. The review before that, we didn't get it. So that's how new it is. And then you have what's called the divergence factor. Every fire chief in the country hates to see that word. And basically, if I can explain it to where everybody would understand it, you have your water system and then you have your fire suppression capability. You can have the greatest fire department in the world, but if you don't have the water for fire suppression, then they come up with this fancy word called diversion factor that they take away from your points. You can have the best water system in the world and not have the best fire department, and you get gigged, if I can use that word. So The divergence factor is points they take away from it. So they use the calculation, and I've never seen what they use, but all this is based on that. But we'll get down to how we've progressed with that. But for the communication center, our 911 center, the numbers you see on the left is the points that we earned. The points on the right is the max credit. And this review, we wound up getting 9.67 points out of a possible 10. In 2014, we got 6.5. We did determine later on that there was an error in that. And in our 2012 review, we only got 7.67. So we got rated well with our 911 center this time, and we was proud to see that. Boy, the next one's a big one. This is where they come in and they dig into us. They look at our engine companies, our reserve pumpers, our ladders, the reserve ladders. They look at our deployment analysis, which is the equipment that we're sending out. They look at they give you credit for your company personnel, and that's the manpower. And it's all based on the National Fire Protection Association standard. First arriving in 4 minutes, your full complement of personnel in 8 minutes. Then you get your credit for operational considerations, which is your standard operation procedures and all. So if you look, we maxed out on the engines. We start getting down to the ladders where we lose some credit. Basically, we've got 3 ladder companies. They're telling us we need 5 throughout the county to really start working toward that max credit. And that's a very expensive operation, ladder companies. The deployment analysis, as you look at this year we got 38.97 points out of a possible 50. On our last review, we got 36, so we gained a little better than 2 points. On that, in 2012, we only got 21 points. So if I show you the other reviews, show that we're continually improving since 2012. For our water supply, we lost some points this time. Out of a possible 40 points, we got 29.98, and last time we earned 32.52. Then the time before that was 30. They look at the water system. They look at how we're servicing the hydrants every year. We have somewhere around, I think it's 5,000 or 6,000 fire hydrants our firefighters in the field have to touch every year. They got to check the pressures, paint them, and then we got to do some flow tests. And the flow test is usually where they'll bring some of our points down. On our community risk reduction, we got 94% of the credit on this one. We got 100% on our fire investigations, our fire safety education, our fire prevention and inspections. You know, we got 5.16 out of a possible 5.5. In the last review, we got 4.62, and in 2012 they didn't have this category. So when it was all said and done, we earned 83.18 points on this review. Looking at the divergence factor, I wanted to show you this on the improvement that we've made since 2012. In 2012, they took 7 points away from us. In 2014, they took 1.5. This time they took 0.6. So it's one of two things. Either your water system's getting really better or your fire department's getting better. So if you ask me which one it is, I'm going to tell you fire department. That we've caught up with our water system. We've had good water throughout the county. So I'm really proud that we got that divergence factor down. In comparison to counties around us, you know, Cobb County has a class 1. They have a little less land than we do, but more people. Hall County is close to us. They've got a class 3, and Forsyth County is a class 3. Same square miles, close to the same population, but not as many firefighters. And I would point out that Cobb County does not run the ambulance service as well, so a little difference there. So we were a class 3. Standing here today, the city of Canton still has their previous rating when you had the city fire department, and you're still a class 4 today. This won't be effective until December 1st or at the end of the year. But of the approximately 43,000 fire departments throughout the United States, only 305 of them have achieved that class 1 rating. Only 1,482 of them have achieved a class 2. You know, and I'm very proud to say that Cherokee County is among the top 3.46 in the nation to earn this class 2, and we're proud to put that 2 up there. You know, this has took You know, the commissioners and everybody thanks me, you know, for doing, getting us to this. And, you know, I'm the chief, and I'll take the credit, but give me the credit for putting the right people in the right place and coordinating. But the guys in the field really worked hard. I think there was 8,000 pre-fire plans, like 5,000 hydrants. The guys here in downtown Canton, since we didn't have them in our last review, there was 400 pre-fire plans we had to do just for the city of Canton. Your inspections department, they worked with us very well, very responsive in getting us the inspection records over. I could just go on and on. It was a combined effort of everybody working together to achieve this. And this is huge for Cherokee County. It's history making. And, you know, the fire chief's proud, I'll be honest with you. It was a lot of work. You know, I show you the categories we get rated on, but I can come up with a lot of subcategories to get to them main categories that it takes to get there. So, but I thank you for the support. You know, it takes the Board of Commissioners, the county manager, the city, the mayor. It takes everybody supporting us to get here. It's not a, you know, it's not me alone. It's not just one group of people. Everybody has to work together to do this. And, you know, I thank you for that support. Y'all have been very receptive since you've asked us to, you know, to combine the fire services, and that went well. And, you know, I always feel good when I walk in this place. It's friendly and very well received, and I do appreciate that. And I thank you for putting the trust in Cherokee County and my department for protecting the city. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer any you have.
Chief, congratulations on getting that ISO of 2. I tell you, that means a lot to the city of Canton. And I think it just reaffirms our decision to merge with Cherokee County, our fire departments. That was probably the one best move that we've made in a long, long time. And you know, it's really great that you and your staff have been able to do what basically we would still be at a 4 even after December, most likely had we not merged with the county on that. And you know, it's public safety is always the number one priority of any local or state or federal government, or should be for sure. So it's great news for us. Anyone else?
I would like to emphasize we're already getting calls. This goes into effect December 1st.
December 1.
December 1st, and we're
Great.
already getting calls from insurance companies where residents called in. So December 1st is when it takes effect.
Now, will our insurance company automatically be notified, or we need to call them?
I recommend reaching out to your agent because every insurance company is different. There's a lot of factors that goes into determining your insurance rate.
Right, sure.
So it's insurance company specific. So I can't sit here and guarantee anybody's getting a reduction. It's up to that insurance company. You know,
Do they get would they automatically get an update on the ISO ratings in the area they serve, or
they have access to it. A lot of agents sometimes I find
may not pay
don't know.
attention? Yeah, we'll let them know.
But it'll become effective, and I would think that they've got direct links with ISO to look at those kind of things.
Yeah.
But if you have any questions after the fact, you know how to get in touch with me.
Right.
But thank you again.
Thanks
for
again,
allowing me
Chief.
to be here.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We have consideration to approve the agenda. I would like to add an amendment to the agenda, which would be a discussion regarding our gun locker policy that has been proposed, and that would be under new business item K. Ms. Wilson had asked, and it inadvertently apparently did not get put on here, but it should have been on, and it will be for discussion purposes. Are there any other changes, additions, or anything to the agenda?
Motion to approve as modified.
We have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Mr. Grant made the motion. Mr. Goodwin, I believe, seconded that motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. You have in your agenda package, too, the minutes from a special call meeting on August the 14th, the council meeting draft minutes from August the 16th, and a special call draft minutes of August the 24th. Are there any changes or corrections to be made to any of those?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. Ms. McGrew made the motion. Ms. Wilson seconded that motion. Is there any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Minutes are approved. You have in your agenda package the financials for July, and this is for informational purposes only. If anyone has any questions, staff can address those questions. It does not require any vote, so we just move along if there's no questions or comments. Okay. Now our 10-minute public input period. Okay, this is 10-minute public input period, okay? Now, we have quite a number here that have signed up to speak, and I suspect some people may have signed up that didn't intend to speak, but signed up just maybe because they thought they had to when it came in the door. But obviously, there's going to be a number of speakers regardless. If I call your name out and you didn't intend to speak, just signed up when you came in, and we have that happen occasionally. You can just let me know, you're not going to speak. But what we want to do is we want to have a very polite, courteous, and respectful and orderly discussion here and comments. This 10-minute public input period, which obviously is going to last a lot longer than that. We're going to, this is a monologue. In other words, you don't ask us questions because we don't get into a discussion at this point. We receive input and comments and your opinion, whatever you want to tell us, and we let people talk about anything they want to, But we're going to have to kind of restrict the time somewhat to 3 minutes per person. And Mr. Peppers is going to be keeping the time down here, and he'll signal to the speaker when there's 1 minute left, and so that you can kind of wind down and end your discussion. Love to hear from you a lot longer, but with a number, we're going to be here a long time if we had too many minutes there, I can assure you. And I don't mind staying all night, but some of you probably wouldn't want to, and I know some of these folks wouldn't want to either. But I want to be sure that we're respectful to the speaker. Whoever that is, be respectful. If you want to applause, I don't really recommend it, but I don't say you can't either. But it does take up time. It takes up time to do so, and it just means it's going to be here a little longer. I do have a gavel, and I know how to use it, and I have a very large police officer in the back that is standing by at my command for anyone who might create a climate that is not conducive to a civil, orderly meeting. And I can tell it's going to be a very orderly meeting. It will be. And I do want to thank all of you for coming tonight, because I think it's very important. It really is. I don't think we've had this many except for maybe one other meeting. It was a zoning meeting back 10 years ago that we've had this many people. So thank you for your interest and for being here. So we'll begin, but keep in mind it's going to be a 3-minute time limit, unfortunately, so you're going to have to say what you mean and say it quick, okay? Christopher, I'm not sure what that says. Masick. Yes, sir. Come on down.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
In the past, we've asked speakers to state their name and address. Are we going to do that tonight?
Well, they've put their address on here.
Great.
Welcome to do that. Sure, if you want to. Yeah, state your name when you come, because I'll mess up some of these worse than I messed yours up, I assure you.
Yeah, yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Christopher Masick, and I'm a resident of the Town Mill community. Tonight, I seek to bring attention to a few issues arising in my community. Nearly 2 years ago, residents of Town Mill showed up en masse at City Council and Zoning Commission meetings to make one thing abundantly clear, that Town Mill was a singular community. At that time, residents opposed a rezoning proposal which included language classifying a portion of our neighborhood as 55-plus adult community. Residents vehemently opposed this change for many reasons, not least of which was that it would have segregated dozens of houses into what would effectively be a separate community, leading to potential conflicts and perception issues, affecting governance of our homeowners association, and potentially affecting property values. We were also concerned about potential negative effects upon the local tax base, emergency services, and law enforcement. This council, the Zoning Commission, and various other authorities resoundingly agreed with our community. The result was a revised plan. That resulting proposal codified into law that the new development would not be deed restricted to active adults and not be segmented from the larger community. That proposal also provided other stipulations, including a council-mandated easement and parking lot providing access to nearby green space. Tonight I'm here because it appears that your will and the will of Town Mill residents may be being circumvented. Right now, the builder for one section of our community is constructing a gate across the entrance to that area and actively telling prospective buyers that homes in that portion will be deed restricted to 55 plus. Additionally, the developer for Town Mill has yet to provide adequate assurances that the legally required green space easement and parking lot will ever be built. In fact, resident requests for these projects have received responses indicating that there is no plan and possibly no intent to provide these amenities. The proposal to add a gate was never communicated to our residents and appears to be a handshake deal between the declarant for our community and a builder. And based on a cursory review of records obtained via open records request, the approval to add a gate does not appear to have come via proper zoning and approval processes. Simply put, we didn't know about it and no one seems to be able to provide a valid answer as to how this got approved. Tonight, it is my hope that this council will work with the residents of Town Mill to ensure that our community is not divided, that proper procedures are being followed in regard to such projects, and that all residents are adequately notified of such projects, and that firm timelines are also established for the completion of the legally required amenities. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. You made it. Kelly Borman.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Borman. I'm from Waleska.
Pull it down.
I live in Waleska now, but I was born here. I was raised in eastern North Carolina. My husband and I retired from the Marine Corps and moved back here because Canton is a great place. We do live in Waleska, but we do come to some of the events in Canton. But we have a brand new grandbaby, and we don't want to see Canton change. So we want you to vote against the restaurant district.
Thank you. Brittany Rogers.
Hey, I'm Brittany Rogers. I'm
Pull that a little bit closer to you there. Step up a little bit. Thank you.
Sorry, I have a baby in my arms. This is the grandbaby that she was talking about.
Get a little bit closer. I'm having a hard time here with that. There you go. That'll take it. Speak
Sorry,
right into it.
I'm short too. So this is the grandbaby that she was just talking about, and this is the reason why I'm personally here. Being 22 years old, I have a lot of friends that are into drinking and doing all kinds of craziness and hooligans, but I don't want that for Canton. Like she said, she grew up here, and I've been here for 15 years. I literally grew up here, and I bought a house here so that I would live in that little town that I grew up in, that I would be able to raise mine and my husband's child in that kind of environment. I love First Friday, getting to walk around and see all these people that I've even grown up with. But what I don't want to see is a bunch of drunks just walking around the city. What I don't want to see is a crime rate go up. What I don't want to see is people getting mugged, because that's what happens when hard liquor is just walking around the streets.
Thank you. Billy Edmondson.
I'd like to thank the mayor, all the council members. I thank for your service and what you do. I know it's not easy. I deal as a pastor 33 years, 28 years in one church. My family and I have lived here for 6 generations. I got to speak last time. But what I would like to say is this. I want to go on record as against the restaurant district, which allow the open containers to be out on the streets. And there's a lot of reasons why, but I just haven't found any good ones. I deal with the families, with the problems. I've never had a family walk in the office of the church I need to talk with you. Since my husband, started drinking more, things has really got better. Or since our teenage son, we started drinking more, our things are better with our teenage son. Or the spouses, or the problems. We deal with all of that. And to encourage it more, I don't see the good coming out. A new study just come out in April, and it said even our life expectancy will be cut. If we'll live longer, if we consume 90 grams of alcohol less. So if it's 190 grams is what they're saying is equivalent to 6 glasses of wine per week, then we say that we don't want people smoking in the city because smoking's not good. But if you reduce it down to 100 grams, you're going to add a 40-year-old man will add 2 years onto his life. Well, what if he dropped it on down another 100 grams? You'd probably live 4 years. So if you search your heart and you've got to look in the mirror and you ask yourself one question, is this going to be good financially? Is it going to be good for the families? Is it going to have more opportunity to drink more without being policed? It's going to be hard to police. It's going to be very hard to check this. I've been researching some of the cities that's pulled it back, and there's problems with it. And I think y'all went in office and you took your office to do what's best for the citizens of Cherokee County.
1 minute.
I live in North Creek Trail, Canton, Georgia. Is where I live. But I'd just like to thank you for your service and thank you for listening to us here tonight. And I believe if you'll really search your heart and say what's going to be really good come out of this, you'll come to the same conclusion that I have. It's not there. The opposite's there. I believe y'all care about this city. I believe y'all took your oath to do the best for this city. That's all.
Thank you. Thelma Poole. Oh, okay. Marcus Fox.
My name is Marcus Fox. I live at 237 Mountain Industrial Boulevard in Canton. I've been in Cherokee County since 1959. Our downtown district has changed immensely, but our merchants and as well as y'all have done many things to encourage families to come into the downtown area, to go to the theater, to the Cultural Arts Center.
Would you pull that up a little closer? You're a little taller there. Thank you.
I'm longer than some folks. But y'all have done a lot. There's been a lot of effort to pull people back into the downtown area. And I just think it would be a bad thing for people to be able to drink out on the streets. And it's been proven time and again. And people that approve that sort of thing will tell you it doesn't happen, but it does. There's verbal abuse, there's bullying, there's, it just goes on. And I am absolutely opposed to this ordinance to allow alcohol.
Thanks, sir. Wayne Sanders.
Honorable Mayor, distinguished council members, I appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak. My name is Wayne Sanders. I've been a resident of Cherokee County for 52 years, and I am in opposition of this proposal for the restaurant district. After being here at the last meeting, I heard something mentioned about maybe a conflict of interest on the Board of Councils here. Because of Mr. Estes owns a business that sells alcohol, and he stands to profit from this. In the city ethics code, In Section 2-467 and 2-468, it addresses this. I'm not going to waste the time and get into it and read it all out. But it also says in 268 that Mr. Estes should abstain from even voting on this, and we respect that you're going to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mainette C.
Good evening. My name is Mainette C. I'm a homeowner in Canton. I'm one of those retired senior citizens. I retired from the Billy Graham organization, and I'm opposed to the restaurant ordinance.
Thank you. Fred Goodwin. Jack. Okay.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm Fred Goodwin. I'm a pastor here in the county. I live at 268 Lingfelt Lane. I've been in the county as a resident for 20 years and as a pastor for 20 years here in the county and 36 years of my life. I'm also president of the Cherokee Christian Ministerial Association. Have served in that capacity for about 10 years. At our meeting this past month, we were presented with this thing that you have set before you as a consideration for open container. I know of no pastors who are in favor of it. I know of no Christian leaders who are in favor of it, because we believe this is a safe place for our families, and we want it to remain so. We pastors spend a whole lot of time working with families who are broken because of alcohol and drugs, and this is not going to help us. It's not going to help our families to remain safe. I find it very interesting that personally, I will be in Kenya 3 weeks from tonight, working with a ministry called Serve International right out of Canton. And in order to agree to be on that trip, we agreed we would not ever consume alcohol on these trips, because we want our attitude and our abilities to be above reproach. That's what we would like for the public atmosphere of downtown Canton. We would like it to remain so, above reproach. A safe place for families, a safe place for our children. And I say that as one who enjoys an occasional beer or occasional wine, but I do not think this will be a blessing for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Abernathy.
I'm Bill Abernathy. I've been a resident of Cherokee County for over 70 years. Graduated from Cherokee High School in 1965. Met Mr. and Miss Wilson back in '69 at the Bank of Canton, and Mr. Goodwin, know him. But I'm opposed to this restaurant service. It's just not going to be a good influence on our young people. It will influence them to take up drinking that they normally may not take up. And I'm just violently opposed to it, and I'd like to see y'all just vote that. I was involved in politics for a while myself, so I know how pressure can be brought on you one way or another. So I just ask you to vote your conscience.
Thank you. Larry Baker.
Mayor Hobgood, council members, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Larry Baker. I've lived here for 40 years, pastor of church in Cherokee County for 38 years. And just want to echo what these people said before me. I'm in opposition, and I believe most of these people here tonight are in agreement with me. If that's true, just raise your hand. So right there is a good indication of what they want our leaders here in Cherokee County to say no to alcohol being consumed publicly in our community. And so I appeal to your conscience to do the righteous thing. And so I pray that you will do exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Fort.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Get
Perfect.
close.
Got to get close. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'll get as close as the baby bump will allow. Hi, my name is Stephanie Forte. I'm a third-generation Cantonian. I know that doesn't mean as much to some who've been here for several more generations than that, but by default, I've only been here in Canton for 32 years. I went to preschool in this very building. I've been working in the historic district off and on over the past 16 years. At age 29, I purchased a piece of Canton's history, a Main Street building, and after meticulously renovating it, I opened my first storefront here, the antique shop, Junk Drunk Jones. This is a third of 5 pieces of property that I've owned in Canton. I opened my shop here 3 years ago, and I had several people ask me when I announced my big plans if I was crazy. Why choose Canton? It wasn't even very busy. However, I had faith in a few things and knew that patience and persistence would pay off. I've seen a wonderful progression, and my numbers will show a steady increase in profitability each quarter. Additionally, in just shy of 1 month, I'm debuting my second business here in the downtown area. I've worked on local committees, I've consulted and participated in many city organized groups. To say that I've invested more than just time and energy into this town is a serious understatement. I've been growing my family here as well, and I intend to stay here for the long haul. I've been raising my daughter here for 7 years, and I have another child on the way that I will be doing the same with. I would never support something that I truly believed would be harmful or detrimental to the positive progress of the city. I am in full support of the restaurant district proposal. I trust that our city officials and law enforcement can implement a plan that will reflect the needs of our growing downtown area. The growth is here, and the growth is inevitable. I know that many have said that this plan would only benefit the restaurants in town, because a lot of us retail shops aren't even open during the evenings. This simply is not true. Many of us do not have a reason to be open later, so we have not. Given the opportunity to have the foot traffic being open, we certainly would. Several weeks ago, I reached out to all council members, and I needed to let them know how I felt about the proposal at hand. And I want to read that now. I'm writing this note in support of the recently proposed restaurant district plan for the city. My support's twofold, as citizen and Main Street business owner. I feel that integrating an idea like this into our downtown historic district would be very beneficial to our community for several reasons. Every day, I stand behind the counter in my retail shop and I greet visitors into our city, residents and out-of-towners alike. I have a very small time frame in which I can capture their attention to make them all comfortable. Comfortable enough to browse, comfortable enough to purchase, and comfortable enough to be inspired to return to our city and to return to my shop. A large majority of them are visiting before or after a meal in town, and many of them usually have a beverage cup with them. Regardless of what is inside of the cup, once they ask or notice that we don't mind if they have the beverage, they're instantly relieved and more apt to continue browsing.
Time.
Okay.
Thank you. Gary Lamb.
Gary Lamb, 691 Marietta Road, not just a resident of the county, but a resident of the city, and amazingly a pastor in our community, 15 years in our community. So first of all, I want to thank the council for what it seems like very adult conversations that have happened over the last 2 or 3 weeks. It seems like there's been a lot of discussions and a lot of compromise, and as I saw the proposal tonight, it definitely seems like dialogue has been open, and I congratulate you on that. I just want to throw my support behind the ordinance or the proposal or whatever it's called. I think that I didn't really plan on talking tonight, and at the last minute I decided to sign up. If we're going to get biblical, as you flip through the Bible, I see over and over and over where wine and gatherings and wine and fellowship is mentioned together. Matter of fact, I see where Jesus, the first miracle he ever performed, was turning water into wine because he knew as the wine ran out the party, the fellowship would run out the party. Does the Bible talk about drunkenness? Sure it does, but it also talks about the ability for wine and food to bring people together. And I would just encourage the council to quit equating drinking with drunkenness. They are not the same. So we're all adults here. We could all make our own decisions. It would be a great benefit to our city, the growth of our city, the family activities of our city. It'd make our downtown a destination place. And before you give me that 1 minute warning, I just want you to say again, I do support the bill.
I can't read the first name. It's McGaha. Oh, Jerry McGaha. Okay, you just signed up. Okay, you passed. Okay. Benny Carter. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. Ursula Cox.
They don't want me to pull this down where you can hear me, can you? Is this good? Look at Bill, he's grinning there like we can't. Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm Ursula Cox. I'm a county resident, but I am heavily impacted by Canton. It's the county seat. I come here for business, for entertainment, to shop, for the law, to eat, to be involved in local government, and to drink. I think this alcohol district, or excuse me, restaurant district is unnecessary. I think you already have a process where you can do this event by event. To have this SOP, meaning standard operation procedure, I don't think this is going to enhance Canton. I don't think it's going to be a benefit to Canton, and I've talked to several people and several of you on the council, and there's this, oh, we want to be competitive. Competitive to what? I don't think this is going to bring extra growth. I don't see how it benefits Canton. We're not New Orleans. With this, you're not going to have any control of consumption, and you're going to be asking for trouble as far as open container laws. I mean, you're going to increase the incidence of it with vehicles. And I'm glad we have a new police officer, because you're going to need him. We already have a process for this on an event basis. We can do this as needed. We don't need to have this as a weekly issue. This is a vote not about whether you like alcohol or not. This is a vote that's about judgment. And I think all of you should think about this. All right? Some of you, well, all of you are here to serve, but some of you coming up for election. We elect you. I don't, but I've certainly worked on your campaigns. I promote, city government, even though I don't want to be in the city. But you are judged on how you get put in office is by the decisions you make, the judgment you show.
1 minute.
And this is not going to bring anything beneficial or enhance our growth to this city. The city's going to be liable for some of these things. Taxpayers are going to be liable. Who would have us open Pandora's box in this? I understand there's a compromise and we'll stop after a week. After a year, I don't believe that you can put it back. And you can't put back the damage to people and property that happens with this. Another thing about mentioning about open container, oh, I got to chug my drink before I get in the car to go home. And all these people that are here that come to Canton to enjoy this, if it's going to be on a weekly basis, they all have to leave. You're just increasing our liability. I think that another thing that needs to be brought up is the integrity of this process is in question too. I mean, I'm a geek when it comes to ordinances. Anyway, I feel like this has been a moving target, and it's just been morphing as we go. I am opposed to this. I'm not opposed to having events, but it doesn't.
Time. Is this Lyle Smith? Luke. I'm sorry. Luke. Sorry about that. The Smith was very clear.
Handwriting's bad.
Very good. Thank you.
My name's Luke Smith. I am a citizen and homeowner in Canton. Well, I cannot say, like most people here, that I'm a lifelong resident, because I'm not. What I can say is that Canton is where my wife and I decided to have our children and raise our family. We feel that tucked away next to the mountains, Canton presents a picturesque environment to live, work, and play. Most and close to all people we meet are pleasant, well-mannered, and share a similar outlook of wanting to see Canton grow, but grow in a well-thought-out way. I believe that this ordinance is the first step in creating an economic climate and level playing field where existing businesses can increase revenues, thus increasing taxes received from said businesses. As an externality, when other businesses see that the environment is changing and the revenue streams are ripe, many will begin investing in revitalizing the city's old buildings and then look into new properties to grow the city organically. When we look at other cities such as Woodstock or Roswell, I've heard pushback saying we want a safe environment for families and public drinking inhibits that, or flat out, we don't want to be Woodstock. To that I say, then let us be Canton. Let us create a walkable and breathable city that allows us for people to congregate and escape the harsh realities of the internet, one that increases our social cohesion, thus increasing our social bonds, so that we can truly feel like a community instead of a hodgepodge of subdivisions crowded together. To the statement of safety, our chief of police stated at the last meeting that he did not see and could not find data pointing to this ordinance being one that would cause an additional harm to the community. If you disagree and feel that this ordinance will do so, I ask you to go to Woodstock. Get out of your car, walk around. Do you feel unsafe? No, because it's a community of affluent people that enjoy being able to have an evening out close to home, spending good money, without having to drive to Atlanta or Marietta. I truly do not see how this ordinance has received the attention that it has when we already have First Fridays once a month that allow the same policies. I have spoken with many in my neighborhood and countless others I've met while campaigning during the last election cycle. I can tell you that the only comments that weren't positive were a general sense of apathy. And what the majority of the responses have been is, it's about time.
1 minute.
As elected representatives of Canton, I trust that you can put aside your personal views and or distaste for the proposal and be the conduit for which the people you represent speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Moya.
Hi. Can y'all hear me?
Get close. Get close. Speak up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's better? Okay. Hi, my name's Susan Moya, and I've attended a few public input sessions now, and I haven't really felt that what I have to say would be of any type of importance. I'm not a business owner downtown. I'm not a religious or a community leader. My family tree doesn't have the deep roots or history that some of the other speakers before me have mentioned. Our family roots in Canton began only 12 years ago when my husband and I moved here from South Florida with our two of our 3 children. Despite our relative newness to Canton, this is still our home. Canton means a great deal to us, as it does to all the other speakers, and I believe that it makes our opinions equally important, so here I go. Canton's felt like home to me from the moment we arrived. It's a feeling I can't begin to do justice to, but I know it's shared by everyone here in this room tonight. I mean, that's why we're all here, isn't it? Because we love our town so very much. When we first moved to Canton, downtown was pretty much a ghost town on the weekends. There weren't many places to eat where there was not, that were just fast food. Very little was available in the way of evening dining or entertainment. We arrived shortly after a very big change was made, moving Canton from a dry town in an effort to attract other anchor restaurants to the newly constructed Riverstone area. At that time, there was a lot of conversation and concern, driven by the fear of what Canton might become, should the city allow this type of change. As mentioned by City Council member Ms. Wilson during a prior meeting, those fears never came to fruition, and in fact, the Riverstone area has thrived. Not long after, the issue of Sunday alcohol sales came up, and again, those same fears and arguments reared their heads, and yet here we are, able to buy a beer on a Sunday without any fallout that so many against it were afraid of. I have to say, I am still not over the day a teenage checkout girl took my Sunday beer purchase from me at the register, my very first time shopping at Publix on a Sunday afternoon. That hurt me to my core. In a very short period of time, though, the good work. What I'd like to say is that I would really like to see more foot traffic happening on the weekends between the restaurants and shops. The ability to take my beverage and stroll downtown on a Saturday afternoon or evening would definitely motivate me to explore more of the shops and storefronts, spending money on the way before a late lunch or dinner. I know there are many people who are once again wanting to raise the specter and fears of what might happen should we allow this type of growth to occur. I'm not here to disrespect those opinions or fears. I'm only asking that we respect and consider the wants and needs of residents such as myself. There's no evidence that allowing patrons to take their beverage out the door in a designated downtown area will result in drunken debauchery roaming our streets. Having a cup in one's hand does not increase the amounts of alcohol being consumed downtown by anyone, and it's not reasonable to believe that it will. Taking your drink from the restaurant to the sidewalk on a Friday or Saturday afternoon does not encourage additional or excessive consumption. It might, in fact, even decrease.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Nancy Lobb. Oh, there you. Okay, you just signed in. Okay, gotcha. Okay, all right. Steve Wigington.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to this issue. My name is Steve Wigington. I'm the senior pastor of Cool Springs Baptist Church in Tate, and I want to go on record as saying that I oppose this ordinance. And you might say, well, what has that to do with you, since the church is in Pickens County? But myself and many of the members of that church reside in Cherokee County, and I believe that the effects of this ordinance are not going to be solely contained within the city limits of Canton, but in Cherokee and the surrounding area. The ordinance itself on its surface seems to be relatively innocent because people are going to drink. There is no doubt about that. The federal government has proven to us that you cannot legislate morality. They passed the Volstead Act and outlawed the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages, but they had to repeal it 13 years later. But it's the lasting effects that's so damaging. It ushered in the heyday of organized crime and untold amounts of illegal money that was made. And while I don't believe this ordinance is going to affect us on that scale, I do believe it will have adverse effects. Before becoming a pastor, I was a police officer in Marietta for 29 years. I retired in 2003 as a deputy chief. And what you're preparing or proposing to do, I experienced firsthand. In the 1980s, the mayor and council passed an ordinance that was even more innocent seeming than yours. The restaurants, if they served alcoholic beverages, would be allowed to let people eat and drink outside of the establishment as long as they provided a facility for them to sit at. And all they had to do was put a picnic table out with benches, and that's what they did. And people sat out there and they ate and drank, but they mostly drank. And that was just the start. In time, there was other ordinances that were relaxed. Bars were allowed to stay open later and later until finally at 4 a.m. And let's face it, nobody's going to sit in a bar till 4 o'clock in the morning and nurse one drink. When those bars closed, the streets filled up with drunks. There was wrecks, there was fights, there was drugs, there was armed robbers, and all sorts of other crimes. And because of the relaxing of those ordinances, those bars and those establishments made more money, and others saw that, and it had a snowball effect, and many more bars opened because it was financially successful. In time, more ordinances were passed, and the next thing I knew, we had strip joints, massage parlors, and most of them could be traced back to organized crime. Now, what you're proposing to do is going to be financially successful. That's almost a guarantee. But what you're doing is standing on a platform next to a slippery slope, and you're trying to make your mind up about taking the first step. Now, that first step comes with difficulty, but each step afterwards gets easier and easier, and the slope gets more slippery and steeper. There's an old Chinese proverb that says that he who fails to realize that history repeats itself is destined to relive it. And I've seen that in many instances, and I personally believe that this is one of them. As I said, this will be financially successful.
Time. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bob Rugg.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I've been enjoying wine at home and friends' homes and the fine restaurants of Canton for 15 years. It's interesting to note that this ordinance has changed from an entertainment zone to a much more palatable restaurant zone. And along those lines, I would expect probably at its final reading, it'll be known as the Canton Save the Spotted Owl Zone. I'm opposed to this, but I want to speak only to two aspects of it. And the first is who it will benefit. And there are two entities that it will benefit. The city through some little higher taxes, revenue, and the alcohol license holders within the zone. It doesn't benefit the consumer. If it did, I could bring a bottle of my finest wine to the square and share it with some friends. But I can't do that. I have to buy that from one of the license holders within the zone. The people who hold an alcohol pouring license outside of the zone are at a competitive disadvantage. Those who are in the zone increase their pouring capacity unlimited without having to go through the trouble of ordering more bar stools. It's not a fair ordinance to the city, and this council represents the entire city of Canton. It's very myopic, and I think even short-sighted. I'm opposed to it, and I urge that you do not pass it. Thank you.
Scott Bozier.
Council members, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. People have been asking, where's the evidence? Can I just read that every day 29 people in the United States die in motor vehicle crashes that involve an alcohol-impaired driver? I'm glad that the pastor made a distinction between drunkenness and drinking. I'm sure every one of those alcohol-impaired people thought they were fine when they got behind the wheel. Can I tell you that you're opening the door to something you have no idea how to control? This is one death every 50 minutes. The annual cost of alcohol-related crashes totals more than $44 billion. This is from the CDC. I'm not making this up. This is from the CDC's website. You can look it up yourself. If you'd also like to hear their recommendation on how we can prevent excessive alcohol consumption and reduce its economic costs, their suggestion is regulating the number and location of where alcohol is sold. That's the CDC, that's not me. They've done the research. They have the statistics. I know that this restaurant district sounds like a wonderful thing, and to be honest, I would be happy to see the city of Canton have a district like that. But you have rules. You don't need an open container license in order for this to be successful. You don't. You have a restricted way of maintaining. That business person has the responsibility of limiting the alcohol that people consume in their establishment. When you get outside the establishment, you cannot limit it. You can't. You can't police it. I'm glad to hear that our city police chief said that we have 11 less deaths or accidents on our streets, hopefully due to the texting laws. No supported evidence at this point. But those 11 less accidents are not going to stay. Not if you pass this. So please, do not pass this. Please. Every one of you, every one of the people here, it only takes one person, not thousands, just one life. Is it worth it? Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Weaver.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Thomas Weaver. I reside at 131 Old Marietta here in Canton, Georgia.
Thomas, get real close to that and speak up as much as you can. I want everybody to hear you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Is that better, Mr. Mayor? All
That's
right,
better.
Good. Thank you. My concern on this restaurant district proposal is more of a technical issue versus whether or not you should or shouldn't pass it. In email dialogue that I've shared with several different council members and also telephonic conversations amongst the same, I ask that council be mindful of conflicting statute or codified provisions under the municipal code and ensure that they're harmonious so that a reader from the outside looking in doesn't get conflicting ordinance measures as to what is or is not permissible. I do think that would help also as far as the criminal justice end, as far as enforcement mechanisms, law enforcement, and prosecutorial actions also in regards to a citizen being advised by and through open records requests and the municipal code, which is on file with the Office of the City Clerk, as to what is or is not permissible in the city, and specifically in regards to Chapter 34, Section 5 versus what is included here under Chapter 6, based on the City Council's previous intentions to trifurcate and now again bifurcate drinking in public. So if this is something that you're going to do or not do, just ensure that whatever you choose to do is consistent so that the reader gets the same answer every time when they look at the municipal code. Thank you.
Thank you. William Magruder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. It still will.
Okay.
I find it hard to believe that Councilman Estes, in writing this proposal, is proud of it. If he was so sure it was a good thing for the citizens of Canton, he wouldn't have gone to such lengths to keep it hidden from the citizens and also the council. If it is so good, why isn't it presented in the prescribed way, having it placed on the published agenda? I wonder why I understand why Councilman Estes wants the law. His business is selling alcohol. At the last council meeting, I spoke against the proposal that was published in the agenda for that meeting, only to learn that it was no longer the proposal. It had been changed. The new proposal showed the hours being noon to 11 p.m., 5 days a week. I call the original proposal ludicrous. I call this next proposal even more ludicrous. Then I realized the author had read Trump's book, The Art of the Deal. Asked for something so completely insane, then graciously compromised to something more palatable. But you still insisted on a vote on this ridiculous ordinance that the public had had no access to. Now, in the agenda for tonight's meeting, we see another proposal with that gracious compromise. We will give up 5 hours a day, 3 days a week, to pass a measure that is little benefit to the citizens of Canton. I'm sure there will be a demand for a vote without a public having time to digest it. I still find no benefit to the city and its citizens in allowing people to walk the streets in the restaurant district with alcoholic beverages. Now that the pretense of helping the downtown merchants has been dropped, I still ask, who does it benefit? I still hear nothing about the cost of policing the ordinance or the cleanup behind it. I say again, if this is such a good idea, why the railroad tactics?
Thank you. Irene Stout.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you all know, I emailed you 2 weeks ago when the proposal was brought forward, and I did mention that I was for the proposal. One of the things that I found in the last meeting that I thought was really good, that you guys were coming together to come up with a solution that best fits the city of Canton. I thought that was great, and so I want to commend you for that, because a lot of times we shut things down and we don't talk about them. And you're giving the public the opportunity to talk and to share, and to either they're for it or they're against it. That's okay. We're all here. We live here. I live in Great Sky. I've been here since 2006, and I love my city. And as you all know, I'm very involved. And so I just want to tell you guys, thank you. I thank you for all the work you have done. I thank you for the vision that you have carried, because it's been our vision. I know you're carrying it, and you're making things possible in the downtown area. And so thank you very much. I am totally for it. And I know it's hard to make big decisions like these, but I thank you that you are coming together and trying to come up with a solution that's best for the city of Canton and for us folks who would love to see something like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Corey Schubert. You've been standing up a long time, haven't you? Okay.
How's everybody doing? Y'all doing well tonight? Hey, what a time to be alive in Canton, by the way. I want to thank everybody in here for your passion. No matter what side you are on right now, this is the reason I have invested my entire life moving to Canton, buying my first home, investing in businesses, and planning the rest of my future. I don't understand the fears behind where we've gone now. I've gotten to hear people for and against this that I love and respect on either side. Now I've seen and I've been proud of the work y'all have done to work and give concessions and compromises, as people have said. We're down now to just where it's offered Friday and Saturday night. We already allow First Friday. That's been clear from both sides of this argument tonight. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. Let's see what we can do. We have a responsibility as business owners of this town that have liquor licenses to be responsible vendors. The city puts every single one of my employees through a liquor class about how to be a responsible vendor. Yes, the uncertainties of someone taking the cup that we have to sign and date when they leave our establishment, they could fill it up. What's to stop somebody from down in Woodstock from filling up and driving up here? There's a lot of uncertainty, but I'd like for you all to give us a chance to prove that we can do this right in the responsible way. I don't plan on going anywhere, guys. I voted for every single one of you sitting in front of me right now, and I've always been proud of your diligence with historical preservation, cultural preservation. And I believe in my heart of hearts, even if it doesn't happen now, it's going to happen sometime. And I would like for every single one of you in front of me to go ahead and lay the foundation for it. And the compromises you've been willing to show, you're not going to get that a lot of other places. So thank y'all very much for the ability and willingness to work with one another. If we're allowing First Friday to happen,
1 minute.
let's see if we can do this, guys. And with that last thing, I'm in support of this clearly, but Falcons 32, Eagles 18, go Birds.
Brittany Heel, is that right? Was that correct? H-E-A-L? Okay. Okay, Brittany. Thank you for being here.
Hi. You'll have to forgive me. I'm getting over a case of bronchitis. My name is Brittany. I'm a resident in Canton, and I support the restaurant district. I don't have any children now, but me and my husband plan on raising a family here, and I want them to be part of a progressive and open-minded Canton. I'm also born in the South. I'm raised in the church, and growing up, I see a lot of just conflict and back and forth. The book of Matthew is against divorce. Leviticus has verses against eating shellfish. Deuteronomy has verses against wearing mixed fabrics. 1 Peter and 1 Timothy have verses against braided hair, wearing jewelry, or costly attire if you're a woman. I see plenty of that in Canton. As well, Psalms supports drinking wine. Ecclesiastes 9:7 says, "Go eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved of what you do." Again, I love God. I'm born in the South, raised in the church, but this isn't about religion. You can't regulate morality. Evil is evil, and it exists on its own. Likewise, debauchery will exist on its own. This is about Canton. This is about moving our city forward. This is about our council members and our mayor showing that not only do they represent us, but that they trust us to be an accountable, responsible, and mature community. Thank you.
Thank you. Angelo and Mary LaTanya. Were they here? Did I say that right? Angelo and Mary? Okay. Richard Jordan.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name's Richard Jordan. I'm a state magistrate emeritus. I served a couple of terms in public service, so I know where you're sitting now, and it's sometimes a difficult task. I'm here tonight not only representing myself, but representing over half of the population of Cherokee County. There's almost 250,000 residents in Cherokee County. That's 250,000 residents, of which approximately 50% are under 18 years of age. They can't vote, they can't run for office, but they're citizens of this county, and you represent the ones that are here in Canton. This being the county seat, I have vested interests. I've got 5 daughters, 2 sons, and 13 grandchildren. And I might add, I've got a wife that's got 156 pair of shoes. But let me say, we have initiated a neighborhood solidarity petition. And I would ask the council to listen very deliberately tonight as to what's been said, because we the people are speaking, and I would like to read some of this solidarity petition. It just says it's with regard to the open container alcohol consumption code enforcement. We the people of the city of Canton, along with the surrounding unincorporated areas of Cherokee County, Georgia, stand in solidarity support of our long-standing community standards established in providing a family-friendly downtown Canton City Square as alcohol-free for the sake of the children. Public areas should provide a conducive environment for all Cherokee County residents, even those who choose not to consume strong alcohol beverages outside the designated restaurant buildings and patios. As such, any such open container of alcohol beverages on public sidewalks and city square public areas, while possibly attracting new restaurant customer celebrants, could drastically alter our community life as currently known. The goals we have is to maintain long-established community standards, enforce public open container alcohol consumption ordinances, ensure safety for all families and children, respect the rights of all citizens who visit the Canton Public Square. As a citizen, taxpayer, and voter who resides in Cherokee County, with the downtown Canton district serving as the county government seat for our community, I hereby affix my signature in adamant opposition to allowing the consumption of all alcoholic beverages to be consumed outside of designated restaurant facilities.
Thank you, sir.
Or any other such place of private enterprise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyrone Gates. Okay, thank you. Kaylee. Oh, gotcha. I see you. Okay. Andy and Kathy Whitaker. Are they here? Maybe not. We're moving along now. Jose Luna. Yeah, that's speeded up here now. Actually, that should end the public input period. And I would like to say thank you to every one of you, no matter what your conviction is on this issue, the predominant issue here certainly, because it's been very well, it's been very civil, very orderly, and I appreciate that, and it shows that we can have that kind of discourse in this city, and you know, we can disagree and we can move forward and eventually come together. But let's move along now. Under old business, discussion and possible action on restaurant district ordinance to permit alcoholic beverages to be removed from licensed premises and to be consumed on public property within the restaurant district. Mr. Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'd first just want to start off by recognizing the efforts and ability for our council members to come together and have a healthy and constructive dialogue. We all had separate and slightly different points of view on the framework and the contents of the proposed ordinance that was presented before and presented again as truly a living document. You know, I think that's one of the opportunities where we were able to continue the dialogue and reach a level of agreement for a model that gets us much closer to where we were 3 weeks ago. You know, really, I do thank everyone who shared feedback tonight, both for and against, on the phone, email, social media, all avenues. You know, and it's really good to see the passion. I think it's healthy, the debate we've had, both amongst ourselves, amongst the community, as the mayor said, maintaining civility and just being able to have good conversations. I wanted to share a note from one of my neighbors. She's a lifelong resident. She unfortunately can't be here, has kids and commitments, and so she reached out, and I just really wanted to represent her position. Her name is Rachel, and as I said, she lives in River Green, where I live, and is a lifelong resident. She said, "I'm just so confused about why people think that allowing responsible adults of drinking age to carry a drink around town is different than allowing us to drink indoors at a table, for that matter. I just can't see the connection between all the so-called debauchery that everyone keeps talking about. Do they think that just because alcohol is allowed outdoors, it means that Canton will become the PCB strip with drunk idiots cruising the square? This ordinance does not change the bartender's ability to recognize when someone should be cut off. How is drinking while walking any different than drinking while sitting? If a person is planning to get drunk and debaucherous, they can just as easily do that indoors and then stumble outside. It makes no sense to me that these naysayers would feel that this ordinance would be the cause of the types of problems. All it would do is bring more folks to our amazing city, more money to our local businesses, and put downtown Canton on the map as a worthy place to visit." She did give me permission to speak on her behalf. And I think reflecting on that and listening to the feedback, I think at the end of the day, we're all adults. We don't need the government to protect us and hold our hands to make moral decisions. Additionally, we've heard a lot of people talk about it, Brittany specifically, I recently recalled. We're a community with morals and ideals. We're a community who recognizes that it is still illegal to drink and be drunk and intoxicated in public, and it's still going to be illegal for our restaurants to serve those that appear to be intoxicated. At the end of the day, this is about identifying opportunities to support commerce, our businesses, and above all, listening to the requests of all citizens. I believe the framework of this ordinance allows us to enable our businesses to compete fairly and limit the loss of patrons to other towns. That being said, I want to be clear that this is not the solve-all solution, but instead a piece of the equation. Our equation includes community, walkability, a river, and future opportunities that are already in motion, with examples being our Panera and shopping center downtown, our mill development, and the Riverwalk, just to name a few. I believe a vote against this sends a message that we are not open for business, and it ignores the requests of many of our citizens. Again, I want to thank all of our council members for coming together and sharing thoughts and feedback. Really, it's been just in a great constructive manner. This ordinance has been shared, has been discussed, has changed, has been debated, and that's because we've continued to listen to the feedback from all constituents. I know we still have a lot of questions and debate, but that's really kind of my main points that I wanted to share. And again, I appreciate the council for taking time to listen and be pragmatic and open-minded. on all sides of this.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Goodwin?
Yes, I'd like to, I know Mr. Estes said he didn't see the difference between an outside drinking and inside of a restaurant. There actually is a great big difference. A restaurant has to serve 60% food. Outside, you don't have to have any food. You can walk until you can't walk. You know, that's quite a difference if you ask me. We've never encountered this. I think it's possibly the wrong solution for our city. I've talked to many of you. I've had lots of phone calls and emails, and I certainly appreciate all of you coming tonight and what you actually said. The vote was, the people that spoke tonight were 15 against and 6 for. You know, we had all of you come. We certainly appreciate you showing up, whether you spoke or not. But we wish we had this kind of attendance at all of our meetings. It would make it much easier for us to vote our conscience. And I know there's been some real concern about whether someone owns a store that owns alcohol can vote in this meeting, or whether they actually can even speak in this meeting. And I certainly appreciate that being brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McGrew?
Thank you. I would like for us to all think about First Friday and use that as a barometer for our behavior. I see many familiar faces here. I see many familiar faces who are walking around with a beverage in your hand and behaving perfectly normally. You're not touching people inappropriately, you're not having sex in the street, and you're not dancing naked. And I really appreciate that from every one of you. But I want you to think about First Friday and use that as a barometer of our behavior. First Fridays go extremely well. There's not been any arrests. Our police chief says that no drunken, disorderly arrests have been made, and it's going really well. People are policing themselves. It is not the job of a government to regulate your morals and your behavior. It is the job of your government to provide an atmosphere where growth of businesses and growth of residents can occur. I watch the news occasionally, and I noticed that Smyrna, Woodstock, Acworth, and Alpharetta and Savannah are not in the news for their open container walking around behaviors. It seems to be going smoothly there, and I believe we'll be getting data on the behavior. Mr. Peppers, do you have information about activities going on in the other cities?
We reached out to several cities, and I believe we received responses back from Smyrna, Acworth, Woodstock, and Bainbridge, and none of those had any crime data to share related to the district. They did provide us copies of their policies and procedures. Smyrna, I believe, was working to go back and expand their district. That's what I have.
So I'll reiterate, these cities are not in the news for drunken disorderly. They are in the news for their progressive ideas, for their growth, and for the happiness of their citizens. This is an ordinance that I do support, and I'm really thrilled that it's changed, because that tells me that your council is communicating, your council has ideas, your council is listening to the citizens of Canton, and we're making modifications. And it very well could change again. It very well could change again and again. And you should be very glad of that, because we're listening to you, we're listening to each other, and we're trying to make an ordinance that is good for the city. Again, we're not here to regulate your morals or your activities.
Ms. Wilson?
Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you so much for the civil way that we've been able to talk about this. As I've watched TV this week, I've seen some uncivil behavior. So I appreciate all of you for being here and for your courteous comments. Most of you here know me, and you know what a hard decision this is for me. I could not support the ordinance as it was presented 3 weeks ago. However, when we were all sworn in, one of the responsibilities we accepted was the fiduciary security for the citizens of Canton. We all know there are several businesses watching how this ordinance goes tonight before they commit to come to downtown Canton. Therefore, I will support the modified version offered tonight, which is for 1 year, for downtown only, no residences in this area, from 5 p.m. until 11 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays only. And here's the important part. The first meeting of October 2019, we would ask Chief Mitchell, you give us a report on the number of arrests and warrants given for alcoholic misbehavior in downtown Canton during the days and times this ordinance covers. Also, Chief Mitchell, you give us a report on the cost for additional police protection during the hours and days covered by the ordinance. Mr. Hooper, who's in charge of maintenance, you give us a report on the following, you give us a report on the cost for any cleanup required by the maintenance of this ordinance. Mr. Peppers, you give us an economic development report on the following. How many new businesses have come into town in this year? How many businesses are staying open past 5 p.m. on weekends? How many businesses have closed since the ordinance passed? And Mr. Green, Mr. Patton, Planning and Zoning, you give us a report on the number of applications filed for businesses planning to come to downtown. After review of these circumstances, Council could then do nothing in October 2019, and the ordinance will sunset. However, if after review there are a few negative issues and many positive issues, the Council could extend the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant.
Thank you. I want to thank Ms. Wilson for her astute remarks and thank my fellow council members and the mayor, city manager, city attorney, for everyone for, again, there has been a lot of thoughtful discussion and discourse at our meetings, behind the scenes. So I know everyone's trying to come up with a thoughtful solution that works for everyone. I appreciate everyone's input tonight. I respect it all. And I think everyone has acknowledged what difficult situation that is. But I think Ms. Wilson brings up a good point of whatever we decide to do here, it should be based on data and should be based on data. Right now, we don't have data. We don't have numbers. We just have emotions that we're talking about, and emotions are powerful, and I respect them. But I think solid solutions and decisions are based on data. So I support, a trial period and gathering data, and that doesn't mean if things go awry that we can't reverse the ordinance or cancel it any time. We have the power to do that. That's the glory in this situation. I did, and speaking of data and numbers, and Mr. Goodwin mentioned, the people here that spoke against and for, and I was trying to keep count, and it was a little bit difficult, and I didn't add the numbers up. But one of the things I was keeping count were the City of Canton residents that I know for sure they were speaking, and Cherokee County, and I appreciate Cherokee County and surrounding communities, and I appreciate and respect all of those. I serve the City of Canton residents, so those are my constituents, and those are the ones that I answer to, and I answer to them in elections. That's not my concern tonight. My concern is making the best decision for the city and City of Canton. My count tonight on the people that were for from the City of Canton that I know and can verify were around approximately 80% for and 20% against. That kind of reflects the feedback that I've gotten personally. Now, granted, the 20% that have been against have been strongly against, and I've had a lot of extended phone conversations and coffee talk with some of those. And equally, the passion on the other side is equally as strong, and I appreciate that. But I think it is important that we, first and foremost, have to answer to our citizens and our constituents. Both lifelong residents, which we all value and appreciate, and people who have been here 6 years, 12 years, 6 months, who are going to be the future of our city, people, young families that have moved here or opened businesses that invested in our communities that will be the future of our, especially our downtown. We want our future generations to value and appreciate our downtown as much as we all have, are the people that grew up here. I've been here 22 years, and I certainly love it. And I think we've made some really great progress, and I'm very proud of it, and I think everyone here on the council is also. And Mr. Estes mentioned that this is not a golden ticket to, it's not a make or break situation. I don't see it as, the thing that will turn our city around. I think we've turned that around, or it's not going to destroy our city. It's one component in a mix of things that we've done. We've tried, I mentioned someone many years ago, we tried Fourth Fridays, and that didn't work, and there were conflicts. We tried Third Fridays and Second Fridays, and we didn't want to try First Fridays because Woodstock had their events on that night, and we didn't necessarily want to compete with them because, quite frankly, at that time, we didn't have the confidence that we could get people to come to Canton instead of driving down to Woodstock. But we did, and I think, quite frankly, we have people driving up from Woodstock coming to our First Fridays now because they are so great, and they have been a huge success. And so I think it's a mixture of things. We have to be willing to try things and try new things, and we have to be willing, when they don't work, to admit it and make mid-course corrections whenever necessary. But those are just some observations. But I think my main point here is we need to make our decisions based on real data, and that's what I appreciate and respect about Mrs. Wilson's comments, that give us time to get the data and react to the data, good or bad, and make our decisions based on that. Thank you.
Mr. Yon.
I have struggled with this issue probably more than any other issue that's come before me since I've been on council. I have lost sleep. My wife can tell you we have had some very serious discussions. I have sought the counsel of my pastor. I have sought the counsel of my friends. I have spoken to business owners. I have spoken to many of you. And many other people have contacted me. When we have an issue that is divisive, it makes it difficult for us to know what to do because we don't have a real clear direction from the citizenry, from our constituents. I was telling my mother today, it breaks down into like 5 categories. We have the people that are vehemently opposed to any alcohol. We have the people that are vehemently in favor of this in whatever form they can get. Then I have a certain group in the middle is like, I don't care either way. But the vast majority of the people I have spoken with, either for or against, their main point is, I just don't get it. I don't understand why this is so important. I don't understand why people want this so bad. That is the overwhelming sentiment I get from the people that have contacted me that I have spoken with. After the last meeting, I went on social media to try to find out what could be done, what could be worked out, what could satisfy the most people without compromising the city. Came up with several things that people and got some very, very good discussion, some very civil discussions, some very in-depth discussions with some people, and came up with some ideas that they proposed that would make it palatable for the most people. Most of those have been integrated into the proposal that is before us tonight, which is the 2 nights a week, the no residential areas in downtown, the distinctive cup design. We have even had discussions about the city providing the cups at a profit to cover some of the cost of cleanup to the various restaurants and businesses, which I think is a worthy suggestion. I had originally come up with 6 months, but a year I can deal with. That's okay. It gives you better data. The biggest issue I have had in trying to work through this is the lack of data. The people in favor of it can't give me any real good data. The people opposed to it can't give me any real good data. And so you're left with your experience and what you know of human nature. And how do we give people something and temper the worst of people? I'm not talking about legislating morality. I'm talking about public safety. I'm talking about people that are going to abuse. There are going to be people that are going to abuse no matter what the system you set up is. There are people going to find a way to abuse it. They do it now. If somebody's really good at faking it, they can go from one bar to the next and drink their drink there and get really loaded and go get in a car. We don't have good data because absent injury or death, the police don't track where a DUI comes from. There's no data on that. If someone happens to make it to Ball Ground or Woodstock before they get pulled over, we have no way of knowing if they started here. That's just a fact. The police, we haven't had any arrests during First Fridays and other events, I believe, because we have a very strong police presence at every one of these events. People know they're not very far out of sight of an officer at any given moment, and that controls behavior. In this case, we can't really do that. We can't have officers assigned downtown full-time during these hours. They have to be available for any call that happens to come in, and then they have to move on. One of the things that came in out of my fact gathering that I think will help address that is doubling the penalty for any alcohol-related offense within the district. People know, people know that it's going to hurt worse, they're more likely to behave. I had been asked what my quote-unquote red line is, where I can support this and where I can't. I did not have one at the time. I had to tell them I hadn't seen it yet. I'm afraid this is it. If we can't agree to that, I cannot support this, even at this level. And so I am asking if my fellow council members can agree to that condition. Double fines, I'm saying penalties because if you're arrested, it's not necessarily fine. It could be jail time.
So the state of Georgia does not allow local governments to assess a fine over $1,000. So if the fine was $500, which we don't have a fine for this because it would be new. So if there was a fine and it was set at $500, double it would be $1,000. So 1,000 is basically as high as we can go.
Okay, well, whatever the maximum is.
Sure.
And I would say first offense, maximum, whatever the penalty is. I want to make sure that people understand that we will not tolerate misbehavior, because, and what brought me to this, I spoke at the last meeting. One of my wife and I's favorite things to do is go to concerts. We love it. We have gone to just about every venue in North Georgia. Last weekend, we had the misfortune to go to Lakewood. And that, I was hit upside the head with debauchery I have never witnessed before. And it's because they have laxed their standards and their enforcement to the point where there is none. I could not probably pass a drug test right now just from being in that crowd. And I mean, it sounds funny, but it's true. And that is what happens when people know there's no penalty, when people know there's nobody watching. I know it sounds cynical, like a cynical view of human nature, but that's what I have experienced. That's what I have seen. So that's what I am proposing that we add to the ordinance.
Let's see who was next there. Mr. Goodwin, did you have something else? Turn your light off, okay? All right, thanks. Mr. Young, you've been, okay, Mr. Grant.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Yon, and again, I respect everyone up here, and I've discussed our pain points, and I know you had a lot of great conversations on social media, a lot of civil conversation, and I know a lot of it was not very civil, and I appreciate and respect how you approached it and how you handled yourself in a very professional way. I can support that. I mean, I think that I think our consensus has been, from my understanding, that we aren't anticipating that. But if there is, I mean, if that, again, if we're going to allow special leniency within the district, why can't we have, maximum fine for violating that trust that we're putting in public? So I wouldn't personally have an issue with that. And I think if it gives us reassurance and people know that this district is for, very specific reasons, and it's not to come and, just totally, totally go wild. And if it addresses some of those concerns, I'm fine with that. So,
Okay. Ms. McGrew, you have something? It is.
Well, I'll talk since it's on.
Go ahead.
I didn't plan to. But Mr. Yon, thank you for your compromises, and I appreciate it very, very much. And yes, I will gladly go along with that. And Ms. Wilson, thank you also for your compromises. I appreciate it very much. We're a very, very workable council. It's a pleasure to see.
Mr. City Attorney, would that need to be included in the ordinance itself in order to that be required?
Yeah, because what you would basically be doing, I mean, saying doubling the fine doesn't really do it because there's no set fines in the city. So we'd have to set the amount of, so if we wanted it to be $1,000, we'd just say $1,000. If you wanted it to be $500, we would just say any violation of this ordinance is $500. We would need to have some thought given to what we mean by that. Are we going to say somebody who pours from their own container gets that maximum? Are we just talking about public drunkenness within the district? Or are we talking about any violation of the district and thinking through what that means? So we can do it. It would need to be in an ordinance, whether it's this ordinance or...
It would need to be in the ordinance.
Otherwise, the judge has
Right.
discretion. So you would have to set a specific
double.
fine for violations of this ordinance.
Okay.
So it could be done by a motion to amend. But you have an ordinance that doesn't have it in there, so that would have to be either tabled so we could put it in, or however the council wants to deal with that.
Let me ask a question about the wording of the ordinance itself. Under Section 3, it says, open containers of alcoholic beverages possessed or consumed within the restaurant district must be purchased from a licensed establishment. Shouldn't that say consumed within the district on private property? I mean, on public property? I mean, it gives the impression that if you're inside the district and you've got an office there, you can't consume anything on your own private property.
That would obviously make it clearer, but since the whole thing is about public property, I think it's sort of just clear that the intent is to regulate behavior in public, on public property.
And it seems to me the same for number 4 as well. It says no alcoholic beverage purchased pursuant to this provision may be possessed or consumed outside the boundary. Should be consumed on public property outside the boundary, I would say. Otherwise, it means you couldn't have anything at home.
Well, it just means you can't take it from a restaurant and go outside the boundary. This is all about leaving the restaurant with it. It's not there are all other ordinances about where you're allowed to drink and not drink, but this is about being able to leave a restaurant, which is otherwise prohibited. So this is saying you can't buy it from a restaurant and then walk outside the district or drive outside the district or go anywhere without the district. So if you make it to your home, you're probably not going to get caught, but it would be a violation to do that.
But you could take it to your office if you're within that district.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you could be in public. You can be in public otherwise.
And yeah, I guess you could have. Would it be illegal for someone to have open container in their office?
No.
Within that district, they would have an open container.
Correct, because this is about on public property.
That they didn't buy from the restaurant or other outlet, right?
I'm sorry, I don't...
I mean, they could have an open container in their private office, right?
Sure.
Within the district?
Yes.
Okay. That they didn't buy from a facility downtown?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Let's see. Mr. Estes.
I was just going to say, and for clarification, I think one of the intents here would be that you would purchase from an establishment that has a license and then go to Drunk Junk Jones and walk around such that the owner would allow for that. You know, this doesn't make it that owners have to allow this, but if someone wanted that, I think that's fine as well.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else? Bill, Mr. Yon, you got something else?
I just had a question for clarification. Everyone keeps talking about beer and wine, but the ordinance just says alcohol. Are we limited it to beer and wine, or does that include liquor?
Includes liquor.
As drafted, it includes all alcohol.
Right. Yeah, I'm not happy with that part either.
Mr. Grant, you've got something?
I was just back to the maximum fine in the district. It seems like we could just amend it simply to any violations of the ordinance would be a maximum fine of $1,000? Yes. Because that'd be pouring in your own cup or anything that violated this ordinance.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Estes?
I think at one point that I wanted to make sure that there was clarification. You know, the ordinance states a maximum of 16 fluid ounces. It doesn't mean that if a restaurant wanted to sell the equivalent of 4 glasses of wine to fit in the 16 ounces, they could. That probably isn't the best use of judgment, but you know, I think that's something to clarify. It doesn't mean you have to have an alcoholic drink, liquor, has to be 16 ounces for clarification. And I think the other thing I want to bring up that Mr. Goodwin mentioned is that you know, restaurants in the historic district do have a limitation that no more than 60% of their sales can come from alcohol. well, this is, regardless of where someone takes it, this is still pertains to that. At the end of the day, they've got to show their records to say what % came from food versus alcohol sales.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Grant?
On the note on the 16-ounce cup and 4 servings of wine. I mean, you couldn't sit down at the bar at one of our restaurants and order 4 glasses of wine at one. So could we amend the ordinance if we proceed with it to say 1 alcoholic serving or typical or whatever the restaurants, whatever you could get in the restaurant, you're limited to that portion as defined? It seems like it'd be a simple thing that you couldn't get multiple portions of any existing serving.
Right, and I don't, off the top of my head, remember what our alcohol ordinance, there are some limitations. You can't sell 2 for 1.
Right.
You can't sell, so there are some limitations.
I believe you can't get a double serving
in one cup, right. You can't get around the prohibition of 2 for 1 by selling in one glass.
You can't get like two glasses of wine in a tumbler, for instance.
So I would want to look at the alcohol ordinance to see whether you're prohibited from selling 4 servings of wine at once. I think
however that's worded, if we could just apply it to this, if everyone's okay with that, I think that would be. I mean, I think 16 ounces, I would just suspect, is based on a pint of beer, but that doesn't mean that you could pour 16 ounces of, liquor or wine. I think it would be limited to a single serving of any alcoholic beverage.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Young?
Well, since we have proposed several changes to the ordinance, I'm wondering if it would not be appropriate to postpone a vote until the next meeting when we can have a final draft with all of the changes in the ordinance so that we're not right away trying to modify or approve with an understanding, or I would rather, if we're going to do a vote, just do a clean vote on a clean bill that covers everything that we have talked about. I would make a motion to postpone this vote until the next meeting to give our attorney the opportunity to draft an ordinance incorporating the changes that we have discussed here.
Have a motion to postpone. Do we have a second? Hearing none. No, motion fails. Mr. Estes?
I was just going to follow up and say I have confidence in the support that our attorney could provide to draft something. I think if we're keeping tally here, I think there's a discussion around the serving size. Mr. Weaver mentioned a cross-reference. I know he reached out to several of us and we brought this up to, I believe it's ordinance 34-5. Mr. Dyer, is that correct?
Yes.
So, I think that just helps tie it in. Apparently we have multiple references to drinking in public in our ordinances, so just keeps that clean. I don't know if there's any others that.
Okay, Mr. Grant?
Yes, and I don't see the need to drag this out even further. I respect your intent, Mr. Yon, but if the changes are just a change in the ordinance to limit it to a single serving of alcohol of any type, imposing the maximum fine of any violations of the ordinance within the district, and making sure the code in the section that was referenced by Mr. Weaver is consistent. Those seem to be, I think pretty simple changes that we could agree to. and with the limited hours, and with those changes, I would make a motion that we approve the ordinance with those 3 amendments.
I have a question, Mr. City Attorney. It is my understanding that the charter says that we cannot approve an ordinance unless it is in its final form. What we have in this package is not final form. Maybe I'm wrong.
So what the charter says is every proposed ordinance should be introduced in writing and in the form required for final adoption. That's the ordained language, which it says it is hereby ordained. I mean, then you have the ability to amend things. I'd have to give that some thought, but it can be amended. And so the question would be, you're asking is, does it have to?
It has to be amended, and then you have to give us a copy of the final ordinance for us to act on. I mean, if we're going to vote on something that's presented, it has to be in the final form that it's going to be put in the code book with. That's my feeling, but I could be wrong.
With all due respect, it seems that we vote on ordinances or zoning cases with conditions that are introduced at council meetings all the time.
We may have been violating the charter, too.
We may have. I mean, I'd be the first to say that our processes are not always the cleanest, and I would certainly be in support of a work session that we could review our processes and make sure that we all understand them and follow them. So I totally support that measure, Mr. Hobgood, and based on some of your comments at the last meeting, I think that would be a good idea. But I know we've done that multiple times, and it's been a common practice, but
Mr. Estes?
Yeah, and I believe our ordinances state that we need to have 2 readings, and certainly precedence has been set with that. I don't recall if at the Spoking ordinance it was passed exactly if there was an amendment there. So I guess, again, I could see this is kind of the equivalent of a mayoral filibuster. I could see us coming back with many different versions and just keep tweaking and periods and thes and this and that. So if Mr. Grant's motion is on the table still, I would second that.
Okay, I'm waiting for an opinion of our city attorney. If he says that's fine, amend it, change it, that's fine.
I mean, the ordinance talks about it has to be in the form required for final adoption. It doesn't say it has to be the final form. I mean, the final language. The ordinance proposed was in the form required for final adoption.
Would that form not at least be in writing?
Well, it has to be introduced in writing and in the form required. So the question is, what does form mean? And without being able to do any research and seeing if somewhere else somebody's decided what that means, I think that means form and not substance. So the substance can change because it's been introduced in the form required for final adoption. Then our ordinances allow it to be amended. Motions can be amended, and things can be amended. Otherwise, it just becomes impractical at some point.
But they could always be amended after the fact, though, right after the adoption.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, you could adopt it as presented with the promise to amend it.
Yeah. We have a motion and a second to approve with the amendments that Mr. Grant has mentioned there. Now it's time for me to filibuster. I've had some concerns about the lack of transparency and the rush to pass this ordinance. I think, first of all, it would be appropriate for us to recall how we got to this point tonight. On August the 2nd, the Enterprise District was added to our agenda under council-introduced items. This had not been advertised for public knowledge, and in fact, most of the council had no knowledge it would be introduced at all. Therefore, taken by surprise, the council nor the public were in a position to discuss this issue at the August 2nd meeting. On August 16th, the entertainment district, as proposed at the August 2nd meeting, was advertised on the public agenda as new business to be discussed, since it had not been publicly advertised on a work session agenda consistent with council adopted policy. August 16th, and at the last minute, with no opportunity to review the ordinance, a totally different ordinance was passed out to council members as they walked into the council chambers with a totally new name and new effective hours. It was named Restaurant District, even though it applies to businesses other than restaurants. Someone suggested to me that calling this a restaurant district is like calling Uncle Jack's liquor store a supermarket. It does sound better, but it's still a liquor store. At the August 16th meeting, the council voted to move the proposed ordinance to old business so that it could be voted on at that meeting, even though this was the first time most of the council had seen this proposal and the first time it was exposed at all to the public. After considerable discussion, a motion was made to approve this second version of the proposed alcohol district ordinance. The motion received a second. Prior to voting, the council was informed by the city attorney that in order to vote that night, the council would have to waive the first reading requirement for the ordinance. A motion was made and seconded to waive the first reading requirement. A roll call vote was taken with Ms. McGrew, Mr. Grant, and Mr. Estes voting to waive the first reading requirement, and Mr. Yawn, Mr. Goodwin, and Ms. Wilson voting no. The mayor voted no, and the motion did not pass. Now, this meant that a vote could not be taken at the August 16th council meeting, and the proposed ordinance would be delayed and passed on to the September the 6th council meeting for further discussion and possible vote. That's tonight. But tonight we have another version of the ordinance, the third version in 3 meetings. It is not the same ordinance that we stated at the August 16th meeting that was intended to be discussed and possibly voted on tonight. And it has only been exposed to the council and public for 1 week. This ordinance has truly been a moving target since day one. Since the ordinance we are faced with tonight is different than the one we left at our last council meeting, what caused the ordinance to change for a third time in 3 meetings? How was this new proposal formulated? What input suddenly caused the change in course? And from where did that input come? I've had mixed feelings when this issue was first introduced to the council. But the more I examined the issue and talked to many people and businesses, it became clear to me that this was not something that would be in the best interest of our city. I've spoken to and received input from a cross-section of residents, young, middle-aged, and older residents of the city and county. And while there is some support, it appears to me that there's still great concern for allowing open alcohol containers on the streets of Canton. Some of those concerns are, will this truly benefit our city? Just how important is it that someone walk around town with alcohol when most businesses are closed? Does one really need to take their drink with them to make it just to the next bar? Who will benefit most? There is no firm evidence that this will increase business or bring any other new businesses downtown. In fact, it's been said tonight already that there's no data out there, but let's go ahead and try it without the data. If business increases, we hear that there is sometimes an hour and a half wait at some of the restaurants now. If business increases, will it be a 2 or a 3 hour wait? The solution to the wait is to make a reservation ahead of time. Is this enforceable? I think the answer to that has to be no. Additional liquor on our streets, but no provision for additional police officers in the area. And I've seen no plan for additional staff or the additional cost to the taxpayers for the additional cleanup requirement. What would prevent me from buying a 16-ounce craft beer and also a 64-ounce growler, taking my growler over to my lawyer friend's office refrigerator and refilling my city-sponsored cup 5 times? I could walk around town and drink 5 16-ounce beers and only use 1 city-sponsored cup. There's a big difference between serving alcohol in a restaurant under the scrutiny and oversight of the server and serving it on the streets. Doesn't a bartender or server have a responsibility to check ID and know who or she may be serving and the condition the customer is in? Under this ordinance, the bartender loses all oversight of who receives the alcoholic beverage and what state of inebriation that person may be in. One sober individual can go into the bar, purchase a drink, and immediately take it out of the establishment and give it to another person or even to a minor. Who's to say? Or wouldn't it be easy for someone to accept a small payment to go inside a bar and buy a drink for someone underage or who otherwise could not buy one? Could they do that now? No, because you currently cannot take a drink out into the streets, and the purchaser is under the oversight of the server. Under this proposed alcohol district ordinance, all oversight is lost, and many of the rules that generally apply to alcohol are eliminated. It appears to me that the loss of this oversight is a public safety concern. Another question I heard from residents was, isn't Canton about more than just alcohol? We've been making steady progress in our quality-based philosophy of development and doing it without the progress being fueled by alcohol alone. I also heard questions from residents about special events. We've heard how they've gone so well, and they truly have. We already have numerous special events where alcohol is served and one can walk around within the event area with alcohol. But special events are energized by much more than just alcohol. Food, music, entertainment, antique cars, and other vendors. Our special events have been good for an entire family. I can't see a family with small children going from bar to bar just to get another drink with no other retailers open for them to shop. What is being proposed in this ordinance, some might say, will only promote alcohol-fueled events such as group socializing and drinking on the streets and sidewalks. Some have even expressed to me that they would not want to go downtown under these circumstances. Drinking alone is the basis for this proposed ordinance. We have no data to suggest anything else. The availability of public restrooms is totally inadequate. Do we want more porta-johns lining the sidewalks on a daily basis, unlike only occasionally at special events? I am sure restaurants will enjoy people taking their drinks purchased at another location inside their restaurant to use their restroom. What is likely to happen without adequate restroom facilities when groups or individuals walk the streets of Canton at night consuming uncontrolled amounts of alcoholic beverages? I've said this before. I've said this before this issue has been rushed through without adequate public notice or discussion and without adequate provision for public safety, cleanup services, or restroom facilities. We've had more discussion tonight than we've had on this whole issue, and the ordinance has changed every meeting. About 2 more meetings and it probably wouldn't exist because it just kept going down, 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 you know. While I understand the desire for some to compromise on this issue, I could not compromise on something that I feel is not in the long-term best interest of this city. To compromise on something bad doesn't create something good, but something only less bad. Like all our council members, I've heard from many people on both sides of the issue, and there are some arguments on both sides. I've always thought that in my duties as your mayor and to protect our city, we should always look out for the bad aspects when considering an issue. The good aspects will take care of themselves. There are risks here with this proposed ordinance, risks that almost 98% of Georgia cities have chosen not to take. What do they know that we may not? I have heard that we are archaic, old-fashioned fuddy-duddies who don't want change, but real change, enduring change, and progress occurs one step at a time. The proposed alcohol district ordinance is not a step but a leap, which has potentially dramatic consequences. It has the potential of dramatically changing forever the peaceful character of our city and the direction our city is moving. We are not Mayberry, but there are certain qualities of Mayberry we all long for, just as there are qualities of our lives here in Canton we don't want to lose. Sometimes I think it's destiny that we will develop like all other cities, that we all go down the same path and we really have no choice. But then I think we are better than this. We can and will chart our own direction. I've had many calls and emails and conversations from citizens about the issue. Most, by far, have opposed allowing open alcohol containers on the streets and sidewalks of our city. I take my responsibility to you as citizens very seriously. That is why our downtown has been a top priority for me since I became mayor 11 years ago, and why I, along with the council, have worked so hard to reduce some of the tremendous debt that we've had. I would hate to see the progress we have been making downtown stalled and our downtown become something less desirable. I challenge anyone to say Canton is not making progress. I want to thank everyone who came here, those people who spoke eloquently for this issue and those who have opposed it. That's what government's all about, and we need to listen. We need to listen to you. And there are some have suggested that county residents have really no business weighing in on this issue. I received a lot of input from both city and county citizens, not just in my neighborhood, but across the city and county. Canton is the county seat of Cherokee County. All county residents have an interest in how their county seat develops and how its image is viewed by all citizens, city and county. I strongly suspect that more unincorporated county residents attend First Friday and eat at our great restaurants in downtown than city residents. More unincorporated residents play in our parks than city residents. And by far more unincorporated residents are members of the Canton Y than city residents. So it's clear that unincorporated residents are important to the success of our city, and we should hear and consider their voices. Whatever is decided by this council, I can assure you that I will work, and we all will work hard to make it successful. Anyone else? Okay, I believe we have a motion and we have a second. And the motion is to approve as presented, and then with two amendments. Three amendments? You want to repeat those?
And so I've actually jotted them down. So the amendment would be the provision that provides the plastic cup in which an alcoholic beverage is dispensed and removed from the licensed premises shall contain only a single serving of alcohol and shall not exceed 16 fluid ounces in size.
Tell me what that means, single serving. Tell me what do you mean by that?
Well, you can't.
That means I can't go in and buy one for each hand and walk out?
So if a restaurant was saying, well, a single serving is now 16 ounces, but that's not what they normally do, that'd be a violation. That's what I think we already have in our alcohol ordinance anyway. So by saying a single serving, it's whatever their normal single serving is. If a restaurant's selling 10 ounces of wine as a single serving, they'd be allowed to do that.
But you get one for each hand, you tear it out, right?
No, you can only have one cup.
So, but you could go in, get one, take it out, and give it to somebody, go in, get one, take it out, and just keep going back and forth. And let them stand outside the door and give it to somebody else, right?
As long as they're over 21, yeah.
Well, who's going to police that?
Well, it'd be against the law to give it to somebody under 21.
Okay.
So
I understand. I understand.
So that was one change, and then adding a provision that says the minimum fine for any violation of the restaurant district shall be a minimum of $1,000. So,
okay.
And then section 34.5, it's just another code section that we would change similarly we did to 6150, which would say, except as may be permitted pursuant to special event permits or the restaurant district. And then it goes on to just say consumption of alcohol in the public is not allowed. So we're just adding the exception for the restaurant district and special events to 34-5.
Now, wasn't that already in there?
34-5 was not. It's in the general offenses. We had two identical prohibitions against drinking in public.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments, questions? Anyway. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
Okay, I believe we'll do a voice vote on this. Ms. McGrew?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Yon?
No.
Mr. Estes?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin? Ms. Wilson? Yes. Okay. 4 yes and 2 no. Motion carries. Okay. I think we might want to take a break before we move to the next item. So if any of you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. If you want to go, you're welcome to go at this point. I'd like to be going with you right now. Woo! I need a drink.
Well, I tell you what, you gotta wait till October till it gets enforced and voted. Really good information.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at that, young man. How you doing? Good to see you. Well, thank you. I mean, you know, it's... We'll do the best we can with it. We'll make it work.
You did good. I appreciate it.
Glad to see you here. Glad to see you here.
Well, I didn't know you had to sign in. I would have been glad to come in
Oh.
and spoke, but I didn't realize you had to sign in and speak. Anyway, that's what it's all about. You know, public hearings, public input.
Oh yeah, the meeting went real well. I'm really pleased with how the meeting went. I mean, I've been in meetings that didn't go nearly that well.
We had a different opinion across here, and everybody was able to communicate. We get caught up in the conversation. That's
Really, it is. And then whenever it's over, we're not mad at each other. You know? I'm not mad at you. You're
I'm not mad at you. No.
I mean, I think that's the adult way that you have to do this kind of business.
I met her.
Are you? Well, appreciate that.
John, the only way off there, you need to come around this way. You don't need to jump off that.
I'm all right either way. Hey, I really
Yeah,
appreciate you.
good to see you. Take care.
What you said was eloquent. What you said was exactly right.
Well, that's the way I feel. I mean, you know, it's just the way I feel. And that's the kind of input that I've been getting. And what's happened is they listen to a squeaky wheel. Not everybody. I mean, it's just.
Well, you get a lot of these newcomers, new folks. This thing pushed through in a hurry.
Oh man, they did. They tried to get it through. Yeah, she got her mind made up when she thought she was compromising, so to speak.
Well, once it gets going, it's not going to change. It's only going
Oh no, it's not going to change, and you can't take it away. You can't take it away. Ours will increase. It's sliding downhill now, no doubt.
I respected you before. I respect you now.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that very much. See you soon.
Anytime I never.
Oh, I'll be in touch with you. we're going to get to our second item on the agenda. Okay. Is everybody here? Let's see. Where's Jackson right here? There they are. Okay.
We're coming, we're coming.
Okay, we have item B, discussion and possible action of ordinance to delete section 6.6 of the Canton Code of Ordinances, to delete restrictions on advertising for the sale of alcoholic beverages. Any discussion on that?
Move to approve.
Second.
This would be the first reading, so you need to make a motion to waive the second reading requirement.
We don't want to shortcut that.
Well, I mean, y'all talked about it and directed me to prepare the ordinance, so however you want to look at that, but
We can, I mean, I guess there's no
we should
emergency
follow
about
this.
it.
Yeah, just-
You want to, we'll move this to the September 20th meeting for a vote? Is that?
so there was a motion to postpone.
Yeah, that's my motion. Postpone to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay. Motion second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion.
Well, I guess we're good. It would just be, and it would really not be postponing, it's just the normal course.
This is considered the first reading.
That's what I thought,
Yeah.
because it's the first time you saw the ordinance.
Yes. Okay. Item C, discussion and, I hope someone has read it. Discussion and possible action to award the wastewater treatment sludge hauling and disposal contract to Waste Management.
Second.
I have a motion. Mr. Grant made the motion. Ms. McGrew seconded the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. At least you got to stand up for a minute, right?
Yeah, it was, well, what it was is there was a slight change in the contract on the termination clause. That was the reason we brought it back.
It was a minor change, wasn't it?
It was a termination from either party.
Yeah. No, it lets either party terminate.
With a 60-day
With 60
notice.
days
60-day notice.
Yeah.
So that was why we brought it back.
The only concern I had about that was to making sure that if they terminated, the city wouldn't be put in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And apparently everything's okay.
Got that worked out. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Discussion and possible action of intergovernmental agreement with Cherokee County concerning State Route 140 cost proposal from Atkins. Mr. Peppers?
We sent a letter to the county requesting that they participate at 50% of the cost of the Atkins study of the State Route 140 corridor. They agreed to do that. Basically, the way the agreement's worded is the city will enter into a contract with Atkins. We'll front the full cost of it, and they'll reimburse us for their half of it. But it's a contract between the city and Atkins, not the county and Atkins.
Mr. Grant, you have a question?
I just think it's great that they agreed to participate at 50% of that cost, and I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Mr. Grant made the motion. Mr. Goodman seconded that motion. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Under new business, discussion of a request for an exemption of fee for renting Heritage Park for Veterans Day event in November. Mr. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to take that on behalf of Mr. Denver Pearden. He couldn't be here tonight. He got injured. But this is a request similar to last year where every year, Veterans Day on the Saturday around Veterans Day, he'll do an event. It's, when I say nonprofit, he literally donates every penny to his organization, and so, or to the organization, Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund. It's all about honoring our veterans. It's about showing off this amazing display that he has related to World War II memorabilia. Great event for the community, and a great way to recognize our veterans. His request is to waive the fee, and he's also asked, he'll submit a formal special event permit requesting, depending on availability, his preference now would be Etowah Park. And again, the request here would be to waive, to request an exemption of the fees, the park fees.
Is that going to be on November the 11th or what? Do you know?
Let me look at the date exactly.
Just as an FYI for council, this came up last year.
Yeah.
And what we did in this instance is we agreed to waive the rental fee for the park that Mr. Pearden used, required him to provide a special event application, so we had all the information, and also required him to pay the deposit on that facility so that if there were any damages, it would be covered under that deposit. I got with Ms. Thompson and we discussed it with Public Works staff. We didn't have any issues with the event last year, so I wanted to give you that information.
Does that include insurance?
He does pull insurance.
Yes.
Yep,
I believe that was one thing we did ask him for last year.
Okay. Mr. Grant?
Mr. Estes, you said Etowah Park, but this is Heritage Park.
Yeah,
he did it in Heritage last year. Is that
Heritage was last year. His request would be to move to Etowah Park, a little bit bigger. His real reason was I believe it was Councilman Rust. He felt gave him a lot of grief because it was the same day as the chili cook-off, and he felt like it was taking away from that event, and which was a city-sponsored event. You know, my personal opinion was, you know, it's an event. They're events. You know, it'll attract people. People don't have to choose one or the other.
It was a great event last year, and I know in Heritage Park it only took a pretty small footprint. And I know I went to both, so I don't see it's competing. But
no, right.
Wherever he prefers, I'm in
he'll
support
submit
of it.
the special request per, and I guess, you know, depending on availability, but it would be for either park an exemption, a request for an exemption of the fee.
Okay.
Do we know the date?
It's the 10th. It's the 10th of November. Yep.
The 11th is on a Sunday.
It is. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right, so that'll be moved along to the September 20th meeting. Discussion of renaming a portion of Riverstone Boulevard to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
I mentioned this in my manager's report last month, and if you'll recall, we had a request from some members of the faith community about this consideration. What you have in your agenda packet is the memo from last month, an additional copy of a map, and then there's a copy of a resolution related to that. I would make note that there needs to be one change in the resolution. It's an absence in the area of now therefore be it resolved. It should state shall be named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard as opposed to just Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
Okay.
But we will correct that and bring it back to council.
So we will actually take official action on that on the 20th.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Next item, discussion of street exceptions for the streets in Norton Lake.
Mr.
Green handling that one?
I was going to kind of take this one. Just if you recall, we had representatives from council for the HOA come and speak to us a couple months ago about this issue. We did send our staff out to do an evaluation of the streets that are out there. There are some areas with normal wear and tear as it relates to curbs and things like that, but the streets for their age are in condition that would match the conditions that we would have for city streets. And so it's recommended by staff that we would approve at the next meeting a resolution to accept 3 of the streets out there. There's 4 streets out there, recall. We would accept all of Cole Court, Cessna Drive, and India Lane. Sheila Way is still a private platted street. And so that would not be accepted for maintenance. And I would mention that a large portion of one of those streets was paved by the builder that finished out that portion of the neighborhood. So what we would do is once those streets are agreed to be accepted by council, we'd add them into our inventory of streets, and then they would be eligible for any funding in future years as it relates to maintenance, topping, and things of that nature.
Is that a private street? Is it designated as such on the sign, or is it a different sign, or is it?
It is. It's
It's
a white
okay.
sign as opposed to a green
White
one.
with green.
And it reads that way on our GIS mapping as well.
Okay. Acceptance streets in Laurel Canyon, Pod 5, Longleaf, Phase 2 and 3.
Mr. Green can speak about this, but basically this is an area that's built out and meets all of our standards. And they've all been topped, these streets that are part of it.
Were these streets, they were inspected? Were they cored or anything?
But that is a typical, part of the inspection to make sure that.
Speak into that thing.
That would have been an inspection that would have been done by our engineering department. I was not party to that, but that is a typical part of the inspection process of the streets.
Okay, okay.
We'll answer that question between now and the next meeting. We'll get you that answer.
Okay. Discussion of alley abandonment requested by Latimer Apartments located at Broad Street near Scott Mill Road.
West Latimer is looking to develop another duplex community, and at this intersection or this corner of Broad Street and Scott Mill Road, during the review of his land disturbance permits, it was determined that there were some alleyways that was present that were still owned or maintained by the city way back when. These alleyways have not been used in quite some time, so we have had him to file a request for the abandonment of these alleyways so they can become a part of his property and part of his development. I believe you have a map up there that's highlighted in yellow that shows the areas that he's requesting to be abandoned in his favor.
They own the property on both sides of the section that they're requesting, right? Of the alley. It says it runs through, what does it say? It runs through the middle of my property. So I would assume that they own both sides of that portion of it.
Right, in the front part, there's a part that they don't own both sides. If you look at the highlighted.
I see. Yeah, highlighted in.
Right.
So I guess the question, where does that alley end up? Where does that go to from there? I mean, is there anyone that would have any substantial claim that, that could ultimately affect them negatively?
We would have to give notice to anybody who owns property on that alley, like we did with the school board property. If you'll remember, we closed, well, that was actually a street. That wasn't an alley. That was an extension of Archer Street. But
do we know where that comes out at, that alley? Where does it run to?
Did you get the
Maybe I'm looking at the wrong
of the
thing.
satellite picture? The aerial photo?
Oh, is that a handout? I got a map in here. Is it this plat that's highlighted in yellow? Is that all we're supposed to have?
I think he's talking about an aerial photo.
Oh, maybe this is it. No, that's the River Green. Oh, it's a pass out. Okay.
I have a copy of the aerial photo if you'd like to pass it down. Neither one of the alleys a dead end into a public street.
Oh, I see. Never mind. It's down here.
One of them dead ends into what would appear to be right of way for 575, and then the other one would dead into a driveway that one house takes out to Scott Mill Road.
It's just a bigger one of that one. That doesn't tell me where that goes to. We don't have that one, I don't think. Where does it? What road does it run into? Cut off.
575.
Oh, it's cut off.
Mr. Green, does that alley currently exist in a physical form, or is it just something on the plat?
This?
It
This is what he's
pretty much just
right
exists on the plat.
half
There
of
is
this
no
one.
visible evidence of it having any type of traffic on it in quite some time.
So it's just something that's on the plat that doesn't actually
But it runs into this street right here. Looks like, unless that's wrong, that's a street right there, isn't it? Look.
I believe it's a drive. I don't believe it's a street.
Oh, you think it's a
It's not
driveway?
named, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Y'all may have answered this and I missed it. Does this alley touch anybody else's property besides Mr. Latimer's?
Yes, ma'am, it does. And those property owners have been notified of his request for this abandonment.
So they agree with the abandonment?
I can't say that they agreed with it, but they have been notified of his request. The letters went out last Monday or Tuesday, I believe. Actually, I think they went out on Tuesday.
What did those letters actually say? Did it say they had a right to respond, or?
Let's see. This is one of the property owners, Mr. Ramon Stewart. It says, "Dear Mr. Stewart, the City of Canton has received a request from one of the adjacent property owners of Broad Street asking the city to consider this request to abandon a portion of an alleyway that is contiguous to your property. The Canton City Council will discuss this request to abandon a portion of this alley at its work session on a meeting scheduled for September 6, 2018. This meeting will be held at the Canton City Hall located at 151 Elizabeth Street, Canton, Georgia. The meeting will begin at 6 p.m. Please allow this letter to serve as your official notification of this meeting and proposed consideration of alleyway abandonment for Broad Street. The purpose of this discussion will be to allow the City Council to hear any comments from the public regarding the proposed abandonment of a portion of this alley. The City Council will not make a decision in regard to this request during the September 6th meeting. The City Council at its meeting scheduled for September 20th, 2018 may take action in regard to the request to abandon a portion of the alleyway. The meeting scheduled for September 20th, 2018 will also be held at Canton City Hall located at 151 Elizabeth Street, Canton, Georgia. As an adjacent property owner, you are invited to attend and address the City Council in regard to this request. I have a closed-in map that outlines the area requested to be abandoned. And so far, I've not heard any response back from them. And there was...
So were they sent, they were sent from here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there were only 2 affected property owners. Mr. Stewart owns one alley, or one adjacent property, and the Laurens own another, or 2 actually, 2 adjacent properties.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have a question on that? Okay.
I'm just not clear which one are Mr. Latimer's properties?
Apparently these 2.
Those
and
2.
Must be this one right here, because he's wanting half of that one. And both
So what's
sides of this one.
highlighted? Okay.
Yeah, and he doesn't own that, but he does own this one.
But it
so he's
touches
gonna
there.
have that
Got
one.
it. Okay.
Did he say what he was going to do when if this alleyway was abandoned? Was he going to make a road, or do we
No, ma'am,
know what
that's-
he's going to do with it?
He has submitted a land disturbance permits for 3 parcels there that's to be combined into one for the development of a duplex subdivision or project, you know, a lot like he has built on Marietta Road.
Mr. Dyer, would there be a possibility of us surplusing that and selling it?
I was just thinking about the disposition. I would have to, I tried to look up the statute during the meeting, but my software is not operating. After you abandon it, then we would have to deed it to them somehow, and I got to make sure I think we can offer it to them first. I don't think we have to sell it by public auction, because I think you offer it.
Because they're joined.
They're adjoining, so, but it's something you can negotiate, yes.
Yeah, okay. Just a thought. Anyone else have any questions or anything about that? Let's go to item F, discussion of Planning Commission recommendation case ZCA 1806-003 for Jim Sibley, applicant, and River Green Land LLC to amend the condition zoning approval to allow townhomes instead of single-family detached homes. Okay.
Both of these items, the zoning condition amendment and the conditional use permit, affect the same piece of property out at River Green, which is Pod B4. Originally, the zoning required them to be detached single-family homes. The applicant is asking for attached townhomes. It was approved originally for 61 homes, and the applicant is still seeking the 61 townhomes. This went to Planning Commission last month, and they recommended approval of each of them. They had a suggested condition that there be a 50-foot undisturbed buffer around the perimeter of the property. The biggest areas that are affected is kind of the southwest portion of this. There are some residents that, single-family homes there that are in unincorporated Cherokee County. As the meeting came to a conclusion, the applicants met with these residents, and I'm not sure if they met a second time or not, but they come to a compromise to that a 50-foot buffer that's adjacent to their parcels. I believe today you may have received an email from me that shows their plan, and they have come up with a 30-foot undisturbed buffer from the residence property line inward toward the property, and then after that it would be a 20-foot disturbed buffer but replanted. According to the applicants, those residents are in agreement with this request.
Mr. Estes, you got something?
I was just going to say, I mean, I think just it's good to hear that, you know, there's good compromise and support there. I know I just speak for residents of River Green. This is something that many have talked openly about and just a great deal of support. We've seen a lot of the layouts and kind of the approach. It gives some good diversity to the community, and I think this group has a good track record of really just kind of being very conscious of the beautification that has been part of River Green. So, you know, I just wanted to share that feedback that I received from residents and neighbors.
Okay.
Also,
Anyone else?
one other item in regards to the buffer, where it is adjacent to the daycare center or the learning school. They've asked that be reduced to like a 20-foot buffer due to some topography challenges there, and the fact that that's a business and not a residence.
Was that considered in the planning meeting?
No, sir. The Planning Commission just flat out recommended a 50-foot undisturbed buffer around the perimeter of the property.
Okay, but subsequent to that meeting, they requested that next to the daycare center be reduced to 20 feet?
The applicant has, yes, sir.
Yeah, right, okay. Anyone else? Okay, and the next one is just the conditional use?
Yes, sir. As you're
same.
aware, that's a requirement now for any multifamily development
Right.
to receive that approval.
Okay, this will be, anyone else have any questions or comments at all? All right, this will be passed along to the September 20th meeting for action at that point. Okay? All right, next item. Discussion proposed amendment to master sign plan for Harris Group. Academy and Main Development, Mr. Harris is ill and couldn't be here tonight, but he asked that we go ahead and allow the presentation and then and discussion on it and questions, and he will be here at the next meeting, and hopefully there would be some action taken at that time. Mr. Pepper?
In simple, what he has asked for is an additional wall sign on the elevation that's at the rear of the building where the message boards are at and menu boards are at for the restaurant, and an additional wall sign on the side of the building that is where the patio and courtyard area is. So basically there would be a wall sign on all 4 elevations of the building so that people would know it's Panera Bread.
Mr. Brandt?
I did notice, I don't think it's coincidence that the 2 areas where he wants to add the sign have an area and lighting there where signs could go conveniently. And so I have, while I respect the request, I do have some issue again, coming back after, I think we gave him very lenient sign variances before and adding more sign variances. I don't see that people having an issue finding the Panera. So I have concerns. I know the other signs on the side have been very well executed, but I wonder about coming back. First there was the menu board and the LED, and then agreeing to that, and then coming back and asking for the LED, and then agreeing to the master sign plan, and then come back and asking for more signs. So I just have some concerns with that. So
Is this, Bill, is this showing on the back of the building?
it's on the back facing the grammar school.
The parking
and then
lot,
on the side,
right.
like facing the mill office, like where
Yeah.
the back entrance is, like the
Okay.
parking lot.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, if you look at the drawings, there's basically a wall sign proposed on each of the elevations. The Academy Street elevation's done. The Main Street elevation is done. This is for the
Other two sides?
the other two sides. And it's similar lettering on the lettering and size as the elevation on the other two.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Peppers, but wouldn't that
Okay.
result in a wall sign on each side of the building, all four sides of the building?
It would.
Which we certainly don't allow anywhere else, so.
I can't imagine.
I find it a
needing one
little excessive.
particularly. I could almost see one maybe needed on the back there when you pull in there to park or something, but I don't understand. There's not much distance between that building and the cotton mill office there.
Right.
I mean, those people in that's gonna know where that is.
So. I think
Something
people
else
that work
also
Paneras.
to take into consideration, when this was approved back on July 19th, each business out there was approved for 75 square feet total of signage. You can approve the 2 extra wall signs, but you also need to approve the additional sign area allowance.
Has he met the 75 square foot sign allowance now?
Well, in the letter that he submitted, it states that the total square footage of all existing signs on the building is equal to 69.55 square feet. Now,
So there's not room for another sign that would exceed the 75 square foot limit.
The 2 additional signs would. Now, his statement said on the building. I don't think he took into account the ground sign or the monument sign that's out there.
Remember,
he's
they're already over the 75 feet. They were when it was approved, right? If you count the ground signs.
If you count the ground sign, what was shown on the plans that he submitted for his a master sign package, yes, he had exceeded the 75 then.
He has met his allowance.
Anyone else? Got a question on that? Okay. Next item. Discussion of Canton Code of Ordinance to Development Code amendments.
All of these are items that we discussed at the work session.
Yes.
I think like 2 weeks ago. The council was in favor of putting these into ordinance form and proceeding with the amendment. One thing area that I will note that probably needs some consideration is on page 2 at the bottom of the page, where it says the City of Canton Code of Ordinances Part 3 Development Code, blah, 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 shall be amended by deleting D in its entirety and adding a new D which shall read information signs, a drive-through menu, signboards, fuel price signs, services offered signs, and hours of operation. One thing that was not discussed at the work session was establishing a size for these signs. In talking with Mr. Patton last week, he felt that was very important to set those parameters. If not, people could come in with a size they wanted for these type signs. That could be something that could be either deleted from the proposed ordinance or set forth at the next meeting.
Okay. Mr. Grant?
And I would concur with his opinion there. Correct me, are these just the text changes on the ones that we agreed to changes? Because there were other
Yes, sir.
changes that we discussed, I think that we're going to look into that we
These were
weren't necessarily in agreement on, but
These were the ones that we got to during
these
the
were the
work
ones that were
session.
kind
There
of
are
more housekeeping.
much more housekeeping to be done that's not been discussed yet.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, I just want to follow up on that. So what we're doing, we're looking to approve the ones that we've already gone over, but there'll be another meeting called for the ones that we have not yet looked at.
Yes,
So we're
ma'am.
not going to do it all at once. We're going to do it piecemeal.
Correct.
I mean, that doesn't sound very flattering, but, you know. that's what I'm trying
Well, we
to
just
say.
haven't had a work session on additional
Right.
changes that need to be made yet.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Mr. Estes?
I was just going to say, based on that, maybe we just amend this to eliminate this part, and we'll just include it with the discussion at our next work session when we call it.
It's up to the council's pleasure.
We can do that.
Yeah. So I guess the next one that'll come back for vote will just not have this one in it.
Right. I will redo the ordinance and I'll take this particular amendment out.
Okay. Anyone else on that? Okay. Let's see. Discussion of proposed contract with the Jeff Dobson and Associates.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Technically, I believe this is the third time that we've seen this contract. If you recall at the last meeting, I think Council, we had a little issues with the wording exclusive. And I did speak with Mr. Dobson. He had a few comments, but he was, didn't have any issues. He said that'll be fine, and asked that I strike that and initial it, and he will initial that upon execution of the contract on his side. So if it pleases the council, we'll put that on the agenda in 2 weeks for final approval.
So that can wait till the next meeting?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone have a question about that, Nathan? Okay. One more item here right now on the agenda is the gun locker policy. I saw Thomas's head come up when we said gun locker policy.
I did have a question about it. In B, procedures, under procedures, and in B, hold harmless, does that address the fact that we would not want any search and seizure without probable cause?
No, Chief's here, he might can speak to it, but I think what we're saying at that is that we are only going to touch a weapon if it remains in a storage locker past when it should have been removed. And at that point, we will take it and put it in our evidence room, and we'll store it until that individual comes to the police station to retrieve it. We're not going to be responsible for taking a weapon off of a person and storing it. We're not going to let the person hand us the weapon for us to store it, because we don't want the liability of handling their firearm or what have you. But if someone does leave a weapon in a locker beyond a reasonable period of time, so if we have a council meeting and at the end of the meeting we notice that there's a locker that's got something in it and there's nobody left in the building, we will move it so it's not there,
Right, and I don't think that's exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking if I brought something and put it in the locker.
Sure.
Then I got it out, would I be subject to any kind of search and seizure? Does there need to be any language that prevents that in this policy?
We can only do a search with reasonable cause anyways.
Okay.
So that wouldn't change for a citizen.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
Would there be a storage fee on that if somebody left them there and didn't pick them up and we had to look after them and store them? Are we going to handle that for free?
If council wanted to entertain that, we could. I mean, you know, I think it's like our other policies that are new. We just have to evaluate and see if we have any issues with it, you know. I'm going to guess that most people who are going to store a weapon are going to be pretty quick to get it back. I don't imagine we'll have a lot that are left behind.
I don't think you will either. I don't think you'll have many. But there will be some that'll forget them. Anyone else have any question on this? I have mixed feelings about it because somehow I feel like maybe we're encouraging people to bring them when otherwise they could leave them at home, you know. But, you know, I understand or they could actually take them in if they wanted to. If we have these lockers, does that prevent someone from taking the gun into the city hall?
No. I mean,
It doesn't prevent
in an area that they're allowed to. The lockers would be primarily there for a place to store it when you're not allowed to carry it in. So, but if you put it at City Hall and they're otherwise allowed to carry it in, I guess some people just would rather put it in a locker than walk around inside the building. But no, they would still be allowed to go wherever they're allowed to go.
So unless things changed over there, there wouldn't be really, I mean, a person would have to want to store his gun before he went in that building, even though he wouldn't have to. And I can't imagine somebody really wanting, that's got one would want to store it if he didn't have to.
Well, I don't think it's just for guns. If I don't want to take my pocketbook in, I could put it in the locker and lock it up and not have to fool with it all when I'm in there. Isn't that right? You can store anything that you want to
It says guns
bring.
or other articles. So be anything you don't want to carry around.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Peppers?
All right. First of all, I think several of you had seen an email or a request from Lane Wood as it relates to some maintenance out at the community garden near the Big Oak Tank. I believe Mr. Hooper was able to work with her on trying to establish a solution to do some cleanup up there. So I wanted to let y'all know that we're looking into that.
Speak up a little bit in that microphone.
That we
my
are,
batteries must be low. I don't know.
We are working with Miss Wood on trying to come up with a plan to help clean up the community garden up at the Big Oak Tank. Service delivery agreement. There was a meeting earlier this week between the city managers and the county manager to start the discussion cooperatively about service delivery. One of the things that was discussed in that meeting is the fact that our service delivery agreement is due by October 31st. And it was the consensus of that group to request that the cities consider requesting an extension until February the 28th with Department of Community Affairs. Under that extension policy, the county seat, all cities over 9,000 in population in 2010, and 50% of the remaining cities have to sign off on that extension request. I believe we'll have a copy of that from the county before our next meeting to consider, whether or not we want to move forward with a cooperative extension on that process until February.
Is that 50% of population or 50% of the cities?
50% of this. It's 50% of the cities that are less than 9,000 in population. All the cities that had 9,000 in population in 2010, which would be Woodstock, because Canton's already got a sign on as the county seat, and then 50% of the remaining cities, which are Holly Springs, Ball Ground, Nelson, Mountain Park, and Waleska.
And actually, Holly Springs is over the 9,000.
Were they in 2010?
Yes, just
Okay.
barely, but they were.
So it would be all three of those big cities plus 3 of the 4 remaining cities.
And is that population based on what?
The 2010 census.
2010 census?
Mm-hmm.
So would Holly Springs be in that neck of the woods?
Yes, in the 2010 census, they were over 9. It was Holly Springs over 9,000.
Wanted to give you an update on the City Hall move. As you know, our city staff worked on Tuesday to move the administrative offices from this building over to the 110 Academy Street building. So far, everybody's up. We're having a couple of issues with some phones as it relates to Windstream. We're working through that issue with a contractor. The comments so far from the public as it's related to the space have been very positive. In fact, we've received a lot of praise from our utility customers on how easy it is to walk in and out of that lower level without having to take the elevator or the stairs or what have you. So that's been nice to hear. Of course, anytime you have a move, there's a few loose ends that we have to tie up, so we're working on those. And I just want to make sure that council understands that that project would not have been possible without people like Mark Crosby, who led that project from our standpoint on a construction side. Donna Bell handled all of the logistics of the little details, getting them done. Public Works provided muscle. Our IT department worked hard to get our technology over there. Mr. Ingram probably had lots of little purchase requisitions that came through that we had to deal with on little items, and everything seems to be going pretty well over there. So I wanted to appreciate them. We will have all public meetings moving over to that facility in October. We should have all of the auditorium AV equipment, sound, and all of that should be in place by that time, and so we'll be able to move everything over there. And sometime in October, we will try to schedule an open house for the public so that they can get in and get a feel for the facility as well. On the Jones building, according to the latest schedule I have, the canopy installation is supposed to be started by the end of this month. We have had some delays on some of the woodwork as it relates to the project. For instance, there at the front where the storefront is, there at the corner of Main and what was Church Street, where the parking area is, the folks who are doing the woodworking have to wait on the people who have to install the actual metal storefront. And so there's been a few delays in there, but it appears like the bulk of the work will be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks. As you've noticed, we've scaled back the fencing and what we're restricting on parking areas, and so our goal is to move that out as soon as they finish with the faces of the building. Laurel Canyon second entrance, we had core samples pulled as it relates to the topping at the second entrance, and we found that several of the samples were not in compliance with standards. And so Atkins had sent a letter to the contractor requesting that they re-pour a large section of that roadway. I believe it was about 1,500 feet that they were required to repave on top. So that project is ongoing. Citywide paving, we are working with Bartow Paving to see if we can get the Marietta Highway project started the week of fall break. They're trying to get that scheduled to start. Based on their timelines, they believe that they can have our Splost and Lamig paving projects done in a period of 12 business days. So we're hopeful that we can get those completed by the end of October, depending on when we can get started and weather, of course. And then on sanitation service, as you know, we're rolling over to advanced disposal with new sanitation service on October 1. I know our staff in the finance department, utilities have been working very hard with advanced disposal on that. We should have our routes completed by the middle of next week, and we'll begin, if there have to be any route changes based on that, begin providing notice to those neighbors. The new cans, the new waste cans for the city do include the city's logo on the can, as well as a phone number for advanced disposal. So if there's an issue, the customer will have that number right there on their cans. We're excited about that. And those should be rolling out the last week of September, first week of October. I believe there's one company that's working for both advanced and waste management that will be taking the waste management containers and replacing them with the advanced containers at the same time. So that should be of help to the citizens. We have had a couple of potential issues that have come up specific to the downtown area. As you recall, we pulled the commercial accounts for downtown, for the historic downtown, out of the franchise agreement for residential garbage. And so we've had a few quirks there as it relates to certain businesses and them not having any location outside of their buildings for garbage service, and we as a staff are trying to evaluate what we can do there to provide some assistance, and with the understanding that, you know, it may not all be perfect on October 1, and we may have to provide some interim solutions as we work towards that long-term solution for downtown. So we're trying to be very flexible with that. And that's all I have, unless y'all have any questions.
Anyone have anything?
I do. I have a question, please. Can you tell me the disposition of the house on Woodridge Pass where it is, the foundation is infringing on the lot next to it?
If you recall, that item was brought before council to consider hearing the appeal of the Board of Zoning. I believe it was the Board of Zoning Appeals. Might have been the, was it Board of Zoning Appeals denial based on the setbacks on that lot. Before the project came to council for you to consider the appeal, the developer tore the house down. If the foundation is still not in line with the setbacks, they won't be able to move forward with the project until an appeal is heard by the council, or they'll have to demolish any foundation that's related to that project. So,
Is that the one that was looking at the extra lot? Buying the extra lot?
Mr. Green
Isn't
might
that the
have
one?
more information on it.
And if they bought the extra lot, it was going to take care of the problem.
One of the
Did they not
potential
buy the lot?
solutions that a developer has is to purchase the adjacent lot and do a plat revision to shift that side property line over to where the foundation that is left would be in compliance with the required setback. I have not personally heard anything from the developer in a couple of months since the house was torn down. So I don't know where they are in any negotiations with that adjacent property owner. But that is one of their alternatives.
But if, are you talking about moving that property line over, or buying the whole lot and using it? I mean, will they have enough room to build a house on what they have left over if they just move?
In speaking with the developer of the house that had to be torn down, they have looked at that adjacent lot, and if they shift that property line over just a little bit, then that does not compromise the other vacant lot.
Oh, okay.
It would still be a buildable lot.
They just need to buy a little, or get a little strip of land there.
That's
apparently.
possible also. They can just buy just a little small strip from the guy, revise the final plat, shift that property line over, and they'd be good to go.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Whew, what a meeting. Okay. I believe that's all we have actually tonight, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Goodman made the motion, Mr. Grant seconded the motion to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed, no? Okay. Good.